Azimi, Nahar, Alar, Bayraktar, Darir, Ali, Cochran, Berg, Carr, Caruso, Chow, Kungata, Goebel, Karras, Kennedy, Kundu, Langer, Lanza, Lavoie, Lemoyne, Michael, Murray, Norris, Oje, Puglisi, Siddiqui, Sponzo, Sullivan, Serwitz, Wang. I got you. Ooh, just made car. Alright, we'll now move to public comment, and we have representatives from the American Association of University Professors, and they would like to say a little bit something. We had one of their members come 4 weeks ago, but now they're here. Yeah, I got it.
Hello, thank you for having me. My name is Chris Viles. I teach English and American Studies here at UConn, and I'm also with the American Association of University Professors, the AAUP. We're the main national organization representing faculty in the United States, and we're also here at UConn a union that's currently in contract negotiations and with the administration. And I'm currently on the negotiating team too, for full disclosure. But I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk basically to you a little bit about a claim that Scott Jordan made, who is the chief financial officer for the university, to this body. And it was basically encapsulated in this statement, which I wasn't here, but I'm kind of taking the Daily Campus's word for it, where he basically was paraphrasing saying the main cause for the budgetary difficulties stems from state funding not keeping up with the pace of mandated faculty salaries and fringe increases. So basically, kind of what he's saying is kind of blaming faculty salaries basically for, and he's using that as kind of an excuse to raise tuition. And that's kind of what I'm here to contest, which is that there are budgetary problems, and we agree with the administration on about some of the sources of those problems, chiefly insufficient funding from the state legislature. But it's very kind of short-sighted, basically, and very kind of decontextualized to blame the budgetary shortfall exclusively on us. And so just a few things here is just on the national picture. Tuition is rising here at UConn, and it's also rising for students across the country. And what you're experiencing here at UConn is not unique to UConn. And so this is basically a kind of a graph. Sorry, I'm having to kind of turn around here. There's the Bloomberg Business basically did a study of the rise in tuition over time. And nationally, since 1978, tuition has increased at a much, much faster rate than almost anything else. Any other kind of cost index, including medical care, which is pretty astounding. The consumer price index, kind of the base index of inflation, is there at 275%. The tuition has increased at a rate of 4 times that. And what's kind of most commentators have kind of noticed is that it's not, tuition is rising, this is the national picture I'm talking about here, at a much higher rate than faculty salaries. And so between 2008 and 2009 to 2012, 2013, basically at R1 type institutions, which is UConn type institutions, the net price tuition, which is, sorry, I'm going to crane my neck around, usually I kind of let you talk, but the cost of overall attendance minus grant and scholarship aid has risen by about 10%, while faculty salaries unadjusted for inflation have risen about 5.6%. And in other institutional types, it's even the disconnect between tuition rising and faculty salaries is even more. And this is actually more along the lines of what's happening here at UConn, where net price tuition's risen 7%, and actually unadjusted faculty salaries have contracted 0.52%. Now, so going forward here with the state appropriations and the national picture, most of the people, thank you so much. Okay, although this feels cheesy too, I feel like I'm some kind of like car salesman or infomercial type guy, kind of walking through this thing. But in any case, but it feels more natural. But total state appropriations have declined by 16%, and when we say state appropriations, I'm just going to fast forward here just a little bit. You guys might be aware of this, and you probably are, but most of the UConn budget neither comes from tuition nor from state appropriations, but from a combination of the two. So this is basically 2014. Tuition makes up about 25% of UConn revenues. And then you have auxiliaries, which is kind of like housing, dining, sports, the bookstore. You have the state appropriation is 27% of UConn revenues. State appropriation is basically just money that the state government gives over to UConn to fund its operations. So that's a chunk of the cash. Now, going back here, what's really the issue is nationally is that state appropriations per student are not going up enough to fund a modern university, basically. So they have actually declined pretty significantly, particularly in recent years. And this is kind of what's causing universities to raise tuition, because every time they lose state appropriations, they make up the difference by hiking tuitions. Now, why are states in this crisis? I mean, there's much larger forces at work here, way beyond UConn. One is corporate profits after tax have been very, very robust, even despite the recession. And yet, that's not how states are really funded. Corporate taxes represent a very small percentage of the state budget. Most states, or at least this state, gets most of their money from how ordinary people are doing, through property taxes and through sales taxes. And nationally, basically, these real ordinary people have been struggling very much in recent decades. And so, and I'm raising this point because there's not really scarcity in the system, right? There's not real scarcity in terms of corporate profits. It's not like the 1930s where businesses are in the dumps. They're doing quite well. It's just we have an economy and a kind of economic model in which ordinary people are struggling, so states are struggling as well. Now, the local picture, I kind of gave you a preview with this. But UConn's budget, basically, across all categories, going into this year was pretty robust, right? And if you look at, even though the national picture of state appropriations were going down, at least in the last year, here they were actually decent. And actually, including a little bit more, if you look at the last kind of 5-year period, state operating and fringe appropriations, other state support, was 3% over its level in 2010. So state appropriations have actually been not bad here compared to a lot of places, and yet they're still raising the tuition. Now, this is a kind of a critical graph here. Let me see if I'm doing on time. Okay. Which is that funds allocated, if you look at 2008 to 2009 to 13 to 14, and this is basically trying to get a glimpse of this time span between the financial collapse and the last year for which we have data. Faculty salaries have gone up funds allocated for faculty salaries have gone up about 11%. So this doesn't mean we got an 11% raise. This means that the funds allocated for faculty salaries are 11% higher than they were. That's because there's more faculty. But if you look at over this period, our salaries, actually the amount we're getting adjusted for CPI inflation, is actually 0.5, is negative 0.5, and it shows up as 0 there because my PowerPoint skills are not enough to kind of register negatives. In-state tuition has risen by 22% over the same period, which is again well over the rate of inflation measured in CPI. So again, for Scott Jordan to kind of blame us and our salaries for your tuition hikes, we feel is irresponsible, actually. So I'm kind of getting a little bit more towards the end here, but we, as an organization, we in the AUP also have questions, kind of as probably you do as well, about how the university spends its money. So Between 2005 and the present, salaries and benefits for faculty have been approximately 1/3 of the operating expenses of UConn, and that doesn't include buildings. So, and this is another factor too. So our salaries are about 1/3 of the operating budget. So you're blaming this one category really for ballooning everything. But also faculty salaries here are not out of line with salaries at our peer institutions. In fact, if you adjust for the high cost of living in the state of Connecticut, we actually rank second last in a group of 8 peer institutions in terms of the size of our salaries. So we're not paid fantastically well given given the cost of living in the state. Now, one thing also just to keep in mind about your faculty here, and this is also part of a national issue, is that faculty at there's a sense basically that we all have tenure, or we're all on the road to tenure. But about our membership basically is about 50% tenure track, 25% non-tenure track, which means people who are never eligible for tenure, and about 25% adjunct. Now, what does adjunct mean? This means that a lot of your professors here are adjunct faculty, and it's more than 25% of the classes, even though it's 25% of our membership. But adjunct faculty are basically permanent temps who are paid very, very poorly. And so we have our membership and really ranges. There's a sense that we're all paid incredibly well, and we do have some people who are top of their fields and who are paid very well, who have raised the prestige of UConn. But approximately, again, 25% of our faculty are adjuncts. Many of these people make as little as $18,000 a year, and they're not eligible for health insurance through their jobs at UConn. That means some of your professors, even though you're paying more and more for tuition, a chunk of your faculty here are at a really, really terrible pay rate. It's to the point where it's really unsustainable and impossible for them to be doing this job if they're the only wage earner in their household. Now, in terms of spending priorities, administrative bloat here is very bad, meaning like more and more money paid for administration or higher administration. They've gotten very clever about kind of how they conceal what they're spending on upper admin and salaries. What we've found is that UConn increased its spending on institutional support, which is the category that encompasses the salaries of upper admin, by 75%. Oh, there's an actual date range that's missing here. Sorry about this. Oh yeah, 2003, 2011. This one isn't. Over that same time period, they increased the cost of instruction, which is, basically the encompasses faculty salaries and benefits by 33%. So they're increasing their own salaries and they're increasing the salaries of upper admin at a much faster rate than they are spending any money on instruction. Now, just to keep the next figures in mind, keep in mind that, at least according to the Connecticut Mirror, the administration expects to raise $2.6 million for every percentage point of tuition increases. So keep that in mind with the next slides and the final slides. So every time they up your tuition by 1 percentage point, they raise $2.6 million. In 2014-15, they spent $41.2 million on upper admin and their support staff, and this is salaries only. This isn't their kind of health insurance. And a lot of these people were necessary, right? But our critique is, do you need to keep hiring the vice provost of this or the vice president of this? Do you really need, say for example, a vice president of brand marketing and strategy that's paid $180,000 a year? Because according to the Wall Street Journal, actually, UConn, this was an article that came out about 4 years ago, if you break it down to their education-related spending per student, UConn is at the very top of the list. It's spending 17% of, a 17% ratio between their spending per student and their admin spending. This is at least how the Wall Street Journal measured it. So even though UConn is basically mirrors national trends in a lot of ways, and in terms of administrative bloat, they're actually some of the worst offenders in the country. So going forward here, and this is, I'm perhaps entering Husky heresy right now, but with sports, there's kind of a myth out there that sports bring in a lot of money for the institution, right? And UConn spent $2.2 million last year subsidizing sports teams, which is the third highest rate in the nation amongst schools with Div 1 teams. Now, breaking this down, sports basically, and the only time that any sports team actually makes a net profit is if you're one of the top football programs in the country, right, and consistently so. There's actually a net loss, if you look at kind of the balance sheets. The only reason that last number in the last column is in the positive is because of this not allocated column, which is 23.1 million, that's basically student fees, university subsidies, kind of some rights fees. So it's basically student fees that keep these sports programs afloat. They actually lose money. Now, an administrator might say, like, hey, it's the brands, sports teams bring brand loyalty to UConn, and that might be true, but it's very, very difficult to verify. And you might decide that sports are, worth spending a lot of money on. That's up to you guys too. But if they're spending $27 million on that, and they're raising only $2.6 million with a 1% tuition increase, this stuff is expensive, right? So also the UConn endowment. UConn has the worst endowment of our peer institutions. We're very bad at fundraising here. Our endowment is $0.4 billion, which is terrible compared to our kind of peer and aspirant institutions. And this would make a real difference. So in 2014 and 15, the foundation raised $32 to $34 million. But they spent half of that on salaries and other admin expenses, and kind of spending 50% of what you raise on your own staff is really, really high in the nonprofit world. So this is not a very efficient body and efficient fundraising apparatus, and that would help a lot. It would help alleviate pressure on a lot of us. So in summary, and to keep it to a close, and sorry, this is my PowerPoint, so I'll black here. Faculty salaries and state funding is the relationship between those two things is not an adequate explanation for the rise in tuition. And tuition is rising here and across the country mainly because state appropriations have been insufficient for running a modern university and the public mission of keeping colleges affordable. And basically, I didn't show you a graph from, say, the 1970s, but if I was showing you a graph from the 70s, state appropriation would be a giant chunk of the pie. The pie would look like Pac-Man, because the state appropriation category would be that large. Problem is exacerbated locally by admin priorities, which divert too many funds to areas outside the core educational mission of the university. And Scott Jordan's, I'll say in closing, his blaming of faculty salaries for tuition hikes, we find to be a divide and conquer strategy that basically just divides faculty and students. So I really appreciate you, you having me here. I don't want to take up any more time of your agenda, but if you want any questions or...
Yeah, we'll have about like 10 minutes of questions if anyone has anything to ask.
Feel free to ask them directly. It's Chris.
Yeah, Chris.
Anyone?
So you say that it's unfair for Scott Jordan to say that faculty salaries is contributing to this problem. Why does it have to be one or the other? Why can't it be both faculty increases in salary and pensions and back pay for pensions for faculty that are already retired and increases in state appropriations to the university?
We're basically, what we're saying is it just depends on, our salaries are not basically out of line with our peer institutions. In fact, they're lower, right? So it just depends on, faculty salaries are necessary basically to running a modern institution, right? So I mean, you have to pay us, otherwise we're not going to be here, right? And so what we're blaming, so since that is a necessary expense, the main problem we are finding is with state appropriations not being sufficient to running a modern university over time. And this is not just, and the larger problem beyond that is an entire economic structure that basically doesn't tax wealth. It doesn't tax wealth in the way that it should do, in the way that it did in the 1950s and 60s when this institution was virtually free. So I mean, that's one of our kind of core concerns here, is that we are, The administration basically has this kind of scrambling for resources, and the state has a scrambling for resources, and some of this is real, and I don't want to minimize this. But at the same time, there is a larger picture that we need to keep in mind, which is that, again, there is not scarcity in the system, right? And that we're nonetheless scrambling for resources at a time when corporate profits are really robust and through the roof, right? So, oh yeah.
So, I have to say I agree with all the information that you presented here, and I agree that the institution do you have a proposed solution? I mean, what do you think would be the ideal way to go about solving this?
Don't hire so many, don't hire so many vice provosts and vice presidents, right? Yeah, right. I mean, just basically trim that category.
Would you advocate for pay cuts on part of higher level administrators to make up for some
I mean, pay cuts are hard for people to swallow. I mean, but I would certainly have pay attrition. I think when we're struggling and when you're struggling and when the Board of Trustees raises Susan Herb's salary by 20%, which was last year, that sends a really bad message. And there hasn't been kind of a across the board austerity. Keep in mind, and this is kind of just looping back to your question, I mean, we're in negotiations now, and we will be taking cuts. We will be taking hits. We're not, if we are keeping up with the rate of inflation, I will be amazed, right? So we're not asking for the moon here, basically, but at the same time, so we're basically taking cuts as we did in the last contract round, and you're taking cuts, and so these other salaries, at the very least, stop increasing them by things like 20%, right? Yeah.
I know about talks with the testimony of capital was on the sphere of layoffs. So as you're looked into layoffs, and is there an estimation to how much could potentially be lost in layoffs as far as jobs go for faculty?
We haven't heard any talks of layoffs yet. I mean, it's certainly in the administration's prerogative to lay people off, and they have done it, including tenured faculty. So, I mean, we hope that's not in the cards, because that would also make the student-faculty ratio go up, because they're not going to lay off students, right? So,
Right. So it was brought up by union members within the corporation committee at capital. So I was wondering if your branch is going to research that, what that would look like.
I mean, it would make the student-faculty ratio go up. That's all I can say, kind of off the top of my head. I would be surprised if they raised that, but given the budgetary situation, I wouldn't be shocked.
So you mentioned the slide about athletics, and we do have a really large subsidy. I think a lot of that is because we don't have large TV revenues like some other schools based on the athletic conference we're in. Do you have any idea for how, you brought it up, so I was just wondering if you had any solution. Do you want to downsize the amount of sports we play, or get rid of our whole athletics program?
Oh, of course not. And I will say also that in our unit, are coaches and trainers, right? So we do not advocate getting rid of sports programs at all. But we are saying that a subsidy that size is something that is a factor when you're talking about spending priorities. But the main problem, again, to me, is not the sports program per se, although that would help not to spend that much on sports. But the main problem, again, is an economic model in which, you have corporations making that kind of money and the wealthy making that kind of money, and somehow that money is just not winding up in the hands of the state, and it would actually lower tuition, as it did from the GI Bill in 1944 up until the 1980s. So, yeah.
I just think, corporations are designed to make profits, and educational institutions are designed to educate. So we have an educational institution that's just growing larger and larger. They're building more buildings. They're going to get bigger. They're going to have to hire more people to work in them. I think educators and faculty, staff, and administration all need to think about, do they want to be in the profit-making business, or do they want to be in the educating business? If you're working at a school here in Mansfield, where the cost of housing is pretty damn low, and you're making over $150,000 a year, you're doing pretty good. So, I mean, I know it's you're obviously here to speak on behalf of the professors, but people across the board need to think about whether they want to be in education or profit.
Yeah, for sure. But I would also say that those people who are living around this area and are making $150,000 a year, that's a very small percentage of our membership. And most of our membership don't make anything like that. I mean, especially in the humanities, social sciences, I don't make I'm not going to say my salary, but it's not nothing like that. And and that's why I had the slide about the adjuncts. I mean, we have 25% of our membership, that's about 600 people, make $18,000 a year, and then the other 25% on top of that, tend to be in the 40 to 60 range. We're not talking about a membership overall that is living high off the hog, right?
So the governor said today that he believes that the legislature should reject the contract that has been negotiated. What kind of implications does that have for you guys going forward?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's not good. I mean, like I said, I'm sure going to take a salary hit too. And I'm not here to talk about, that per se. I'm here to respond about this kind of, tuition and faculty salary link. But yeah, it's not good. I'll say that. I have no idea how it's going to play out. But the chances of us even getting a raise that matches CPI, which is basically not get a pay cut, just got a lot grimmer.
So you kind of mentioned in one of your charts about tuition increases and how state appropriations has shrunk over time. And one of our goals as a government has been to try to push legislature to get another undergraduate and graduate student on the Board of Trustees. Do you think you would support that?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. It's about exactly at the national. It's at the national average for this institutional type, which is like a research one university. They're nationally, it's about 25% of faculty everywhere. So again, that itself is not a UConn specific problem, but I guess the concern if I were you, the concern I would have is that why is tuition going up and more of the faculty are kind of these permanent students, whether it's graduate students or adjunct faculty, right? And I'm not saying that graduate students or adjunct faculty aren't good teachers or never teach well, but that it seems like if tuition is going up, your professors basically, your faculty should have the training to match it.
Are there any other questions? All right, thank you, Chris. We'll now move into the approval of the minutes from February 17, 2016. Do I have a motion? Berg. Second. Sponzo. Any questions? Any debate? All those in favor of approving the minutes from February 17, 2016, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? And clearly passes. We'll now move to new business and act concerning legislative funding for the Yukon women's ski team. Sponsoring Senator. You have enough senators?
An act concerning legislative funding for the Yukon women's ski team.
Yeah, George, this is so innovative. Oh my God.
He's great. Whereas the undergraduate student government is charged with improving the quality of student initiatives through funding.
Whereas the Yukon women's ski team recently advanced to the regional competition.
Whereas the Yukon women's ski team did not foresee being invited to this competition.
Whereas the Yukon women's ski team will bring 12 members to this competition.
Whereas the Yukon women's ski team requests a total of $647.46 for 3 hotel rooms for 2 nights.
Whereas hotel rooms are funded at a maximum of $150 per night with a minimum of 4 participants per room.
Whereas this request is a Category D and is subject to a 75 disbursement cut.
Therefore, be it resolved that the undergraduate student government allocates $485.56 to the Yukon women's ski team.
I will give the motion to Puglisi. Anyone like to second this? Yes, Bird. Are there any questions regarding this piece of legislation?
Isn't it technically a 25% disbursement cut? We're not cutting 75%. I mean, yeah, but
That's just the wording in the funding policies.
we say that all the time.
Are there any other questions?
We're gonna win.
All right, thank you. We'll sit down. We'll now move into debate. Would anyone like to be recognized for debate? Chairperson Porcello.
All right, so I have to say this just, to be upfront with the Senate. Now, I think this should pass. Technically, and I really mean technically, this puts them over $12,000. But when the men's and women's ski team both use the same coach, and Senator Byrd passed legislation this year to make it so it would be $3,000 and $3,000. What happened was in their budget, they requested $4,000 and the men's team did $2,000. I didn't change it, I just let it go. I didn't really think it would be a problem. And now it's a problem. So technically, I'm treating this as if the men's team requested $3,000 and the women's team requested $3,000. That would not put them over the $12,000 cap. So I do not, I'm just wanting to be honest so everyone knows that I'm paying attention to this stuff, but don't vote against them, at least in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson Porcello. Would anyone else like to be recognized for debate? All right, seeing none, we'll move into a vote. All those in favor of approving an act concerning legislative funding for the Yukon women's ski team, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? And clearly passes. Come on, we can clap, guys. Come on. All right, we'll now move into an act concerning legislative funding for the Yukon men's ski team, which is being withdrawn. I don't know why.
Sponsor side would like to withdraw the legislation, Mr. Speaker.
Withdrawn. That's very cool with it. All right, we'll now move into an act concerning legislative funding for Husky Hangama. My apologies. Sponsoring senators.
An act concerning legislative funding for Husky Hangama. Whereas the undergraduate student government is charged with improving the quality of student initiatives through funding. Whereas Husky Hangama was accepted into the Yachting, an a cappella competition in Boston. Whereas Husky Hungama originally requested funding for an application fee of $90, which was approved and funded at a 75% disbursement cut by the USG funding board. Whereas Yachting is charging an additional $20 per team member, a fee that was not in place last year.
Whereas Husky Hungama will bring 14 members to the competition, and whereas Husky Hungama requests a total of $280 for this unexpected fee, whereas this request is category D and subject to a 75% disbursement cut, therefore be it resolved that the undergraduate student government allocates $210 to Husky Hungama.
Wait,
Yes.
oh, no.
Are there any questions? Oh, sorry. I'll give the motion to Durir. Oh, you don't want it? Would anyone like to second? Yes, Lemoyne. Are there questions for the sponsoring senators? Thank you. Sit down. We'll now move into debate. Is there any debate regarding this piece of legislation? All right, seeing none, we'll move into. Your can't vote. That's right. You're absolutely right. That's what she said. Sorry. Ali, would you like to motion instead because your name's on here? Second, we'll still go to the line. Go for questions? Debate? All those in favor of approving an act concerning legislative funding for Husky Hungama, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? Clearly passes. All right, we'll move down to an act concerning legislative funding for Yukon Filipino American Student Association.
Can we get that up on the screen, please? I got it.
An act concerning legislative funding for the Yukon Filipino American Student Association. Whereas the undergraduate student government is charged with improving the quality of student initiatives for funding, whereas the Yukon Filipino American Student Association recently garnered an unexpected amount of interest from one of the events, whereas the Yukon Filipino American Student Association is seeking to change the style of the event, whereas the Yukon Filipino American Student Association requests $494 for space rental fees, composed of a setup fee at $27, a rental fee of $440, $110 per hour, and a cleanup fee of $27. Whereas the Yukon Filipino American Student Association requests $190.12 for supplies and equipment. Whereas the event is category C and is subject to a 75% disbursement cut. Therefore, be it resolved, the undergraduate student government allocates $513.09 to the Yukon Filipino American Student Association.
I'll give the motion to Ali. Is there a second? I'll get to Bird. Are there any questions? Yes, Chairperson Bird.
Deputy Speaker Ryan, can you explain what it means to change the style of the event and where these costs come from and why they weren't originally asked for in the very beginning?
I'd like to, if the speaker can yield to the representatives from the group.
Absolutely. You can come up here.
Hello everyone, my name is Ian Garcia. I'm one of the co-presidents for UConn Boston. So your question was regarding the third part and also...
Yeah, so why and how are you seeking to change the style of the event?
So initially we were thinking of a event that could almost potentially raise money for a scholarship, but we don't want to create such an event, whereas we won't get funding for something like that initially. So we want to change it to just a cultural night, but we want to, as part of our mission statement, we want to promote awareness, camaraderie, and unity on all things regarding the Philippine culture. And this year we've had a lot of, as I said before, we've had a lot of increased interest in our organization. We managed to have two really big events for the first time this year, something leadership conference, and also host a big East Coast conference at UConn. So a lot of interest has been garnered there, and we feel it's a good time to celebrate our accomplishments this year. And since those happened last semester, we weren't able to use the normal the normal ways of funding.
Are there any other questions? Yes, Director Johnny.
So will you still be collecting any type of money or donations for that type of like letters kind of thing?
No, we won't be collecting money for anything.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? All right, thank you. You may all sit down. We'll now move into debate. Would anyone like to debate this piece of legislation? Seeing none, we'll move into a vote. All those in favor of approving and acting concerning legislative funding for the Yukon Filipino American Student Association, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? And clearly passes. So by unanimous consent, I would like to add an act concerning impeachment trial procedures in the undergraduate student government. I know this is late, but because of everything that's occurred, it's just been pushed along, and we've been just trying very hard to get it all through. I sent it to you guys about 15 minutes before Senate, so feel free when we go through this. We're going to go through this very thoroughly because next week this is very important that we establish this now. Is there anyone dissenting against adding this into the agenda? We'll go into a vote about adding it into the agenda then. All those in favor of adding an act concerning impeachment trial procedures in the undergraduate student government, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Aye. Any abstentions? And so ordered. All right. No roll call? For what, the vote or just to have it? Okay. All right. Ali. Bakaran. Bird.
Here.
Bird.
Here.
Carr. Caruso.
Here.
Chow. Pignata. Goebel. Karras. Kennedy. Kundu.
Here.
Langer. Lanza. Lavoy. Lemoyne.
Here.
Michael.
Here.
Murray.
Here.
Ing. Norris. Oje. Puglisi.
Here.
Siddiqui. Sponzo.
Here.
Sullivan. Surwitz.
Here.
Wang.
Here.
There are 19 people here.
You didn't call my name.
You didn't call me. You didn't call me.
Sorry,
No, it's not.
Oh, Parker's still not on this.
Yeah, but he saw his call our name.
No, that's not.
Sorry, Braden.
Ah.
So it's 20 out of 28. I apologize. Okay. Take it away.
Do you want me to read this entire thing out loud? Okay, it's really long. Couple, like 7 pages? Right. Okay.
No, I would like you all to go through this, please. So,
Wait, okay. Wait, motion for that.
what do you? If I gave you guys a 5-minute recess right now, will you all promise to read it? This is very important. I can't stress how important this is. No, it was absolutely my mistake that it was this late. It's because of the time frame. So,
Do a 5 minute.
are you guys okay with 5 minutes? And if you don't get through it all, we can go over it all together. Are you comfortable doing it yourself, or do you want to do it all together now?
I think we should do it all together.
We'll do it all together.
We can do it all together now. Sorry, that might be Ben.
Okay, we're gonna do this together then.
All right, so an act concerning impeachment trial procedures in the undergraduate student government. So, whereas the undergraduate student government has no procedures for impeachment trials within the bylaws, therefore be it resolved that the undergraduate student government accepts the following impeachment trial rules and procedures as an amendment to bylaw 19. So, if you look through the rest of this, everything in here that is in black, except for at the very end, is stuff that is already in the bylaws, and the stuff that is red is what we have changed. So, The first change is located in subsection, I think that should be 5. In its decision, the judiciary may use any information available, the information presented at the impeachment hearing. The judiciary shall render the decision within 48 hours of the impeachment hearing. As per the undergraduates, as per the undergraduate student government constitution, articles of impeachment may only be brought before Senate in the event that a majority of the judiciary approves. In the event that the judiciary sees fit to bring articles of impeachment to the Senate, the articles shall be brought to Senate at a session set by the Speaker. The session shall be no more than 4 weeks after the judiciary forwards the articles of impeachment. If you're wondering as to why it's 4 weeks, it's because there are 4 weeks in a month, as I was informed earlier today.
And also so that if the petitioner or the person accused can't make that, the bylaws don't bind us to holding it there.
Exactly. So, in the event that one of the parties is unable to make the what was originally the next Senate meeting, this will give the Speaker the freedom to change that date so that all parties involved in the case may be able to represent themselves there. Make sense? All right. So the next big change is, if you scroll down, so these are the new rules and procedures that we are looking to implement for USG Senate when it is sitting on impeachment trials. So a little bit of background on this. This is basically adapted from a variety of different sources. One is U.S. Senate impeachment procedure, one is trial court procedure, and one is the procedures that other schools might use. So the first clause here declares the parties, so parties are going to be assembled group of peoples that represent either the plaintiffs or the defendants. All parties must be notified of the trial at least 1 week in advance. I think that that's a fair amount of time. That gives parties enough time to assemble evidence, collect a list of witnesses. And additionally, previously, there had been a stipulation that there should only be 36 hours. I didn't think that that was fair. In a lot of cases, if these trials happen around exam time, that gives people a lot of crunch time. This will, at the very least, make sure that they have a weekend to go over everything. So I think that's fair. So parties must declare themselves before the trial. If a member of the Senate declares himself or herself as a member of a party, he or she shall be barred from acting as a member of Senate during the trial. So the reason that, I see some faces in there. So the reason why that is because members of Senate for the purposes of impeachment trials become the jury. You cannot serve on the jury if you are representing either the plaintiff or the defendant. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Just a clarification, anyone who would declare themselves the party and remove themselves from the jury, would that count against the quorum?
No.
So how this voting would work is you need a 2/3 in order to vote someone out. So that would effectively. No, go ahead. Sorry.
My apologies, Mr. Speaker, but so basically, if you scroll down to the very end, 2/3 of the sitting Senate is what is required to return a guilty verdict. So this means that this will lower that
Quorum.
basically.
Like the voting senators.
Yeah. So
it wouldn't count against the vote. You just wouldn't be a part of it.
they will not count as a member of the sitting Senate. Any other questions? Okay, good. Next section. Parties must present their evidence and a list of witnesses to Senate leadership 3 days in advance of the trial. So that just means Monday. I think that's a good amount of time. That allows both the Senate to review all the evidence, and it also allows each of the parties to review their evidence with each other, and from there make whatever strategies they so wish. And there's a subsection there that the defendant may not be listed as a witness unless it is of his or her own consent. That's just, you have a right to not self-incriminate, so you will not be required to be a witness at your trial. Make sense?
I know this might be nitpicky, but is there any way to change language
like interneutral?
Sure, what would you suggest?
Like just shoot like an individual person.
Okay, Mr. Speaker.
It hasn't been motioned yet, so you should.
Yeah.
Is that okay, individuals?
Yeah, it's like I don't know, just trying to do it myself or something that's like
Thank you.
contestable.
Yep, here, I got it.
Themselves.
Sorry. Is that? Where else?
Each team shall be barred.
Oh,
So you can say A.
I was gonna go with that member of Senate.
Yeah, whatever.
Change the autocorrect to themselves. That's interesting.
I don't know, it's not
Howard?
Oh,
Good?
Yeah.
Okay.
themselves.
All right.
Yeah, themselves is how it works.
My bad. I swear I passed the SATs. That good?
Yeah.
Good.
There's just a few,
Right, so the plurality should now all be corrected. Parties must declare themselves before the trial. If any members of the Senate declare themselves as members.
Oh, I know.
Members of the Senate declare themselves as a member of a party, those, I don't know why that is key. Those senators shall be barred from acting as members of Senate during trial.
Themselves as members. Right? Or, I'm just telling you. But no, you're talking about.
Good?
I don't know.
How about declare?
If any member of Senate, just say member of
Well,
Senate.
no, so if any members of the Senate declare themselves as members of a party, those senators shall be barred from acting as members of Senate during the trial.
I think that's.
Good? Good. I'm getting thumbs up. Okay. Next section. So, somebody said something? Good.
No, I just said sorry.
No worries. I should have thought about that before, so thank you for correcting me. Members of Senate shall serve as the role of jury. As such, they must address all questions to the chair and not to either party. If a member of Senate would like to ask a question of either party, they shall reduce their question to writing and provide it to the parliamentarian who may ask such a question. Make sense? So the rationale behind that is that now that the Senate is acting as a jury, they should not be directing the flow of the conversation. If there's any miscommunication that needs to be corrected, this allows them to correct that miscommunication, but at the same time discourages Senate from actively directing the conversation. Good? Okay. The chair shall direct the parliamentarian to begin matters of impeachment. The parliamentarian shall declare that the legislative business of the Senate is suspended, and all persons are commanded to keep silence unless recognized by the chair. Exceptions are granted for objections by either party, or if a member of Senate requests a vote on a decision made by the chair. That's almost a direct quote from U.S. Senate procedures, if you can't tell. The chair shall have the right to rule on questions of evidence. The chair's ruling shall stand as a judgment of the Senate unless a member of Senate requests a vote on a decision made by the chair. Make sense? Witnesses may be examined by one person on behalf of the party producing them, then cross-examined by one person of the other party. and re-examined by one person on behalf of the producing party. Cross-examination must be limited to the scope of the direct examination, and redirect must be limited to the scope of cross-examination. Does that make sense? That's kind of complicated.
Sorry, I had a question on the board. So if a member of the Senate requests a vote on a decision made by the chair, does that request go up for vote?
No. So basically, the member of Senate can appeal the decision of the chair, in which case that goes directly to a vote on the chair's decision. So that's basically from Robert's rules.
Yes, Senator Canada.
Are there no other listed standards for evidence? It's just what you decide. And there's no set policy on what qualifies as evidence.
I'm sorry, I wasn't able to hear that question.
So the chair has the right to rule on questions of evidence, but are there no written standards or predetermined standards for evidence?
Give me 1 second, let me just look through this. Okay, so so the evidence, if you look up above, needs to be introduced to the Senate leadership 3 days in advance of trial. Senate leadership will send that out to everybody. And during the trial, that is a good question. This is something that wasn't addressed necessarily in the different documents I was looking at because they're usually addressed somewhere else. But in my opinion, the party would have to present the evidence as credible. And if you do look below under the objections, the no foundation objection is what a party could use if they believe that the evidence is not credible. If you would like to suggest a change, I'd be happy to. And okay. Here, how about this? Evidence must be derived from a primary source. Does that sound?
No.
So the question that we're currently discussing is there any definition of evidence? What can qualify as evidence and what is not really qualified as evidence?
Chair, have a discussion about what constitutes evidence?
Well, that's currently what the document says, but I do see Senator Cagnata's point that that could be something that is of concern if that isn't necessarily Senator Byrd.
I think the Senate have the right to override any decision the chair makes in terms of what constitutes evidence. So if the chair decides something isn't evidence, and the Senate wants to convert it as evidence, they can vote by two-thirds votes.
That is correct. I do know that in typical court procedure, there are standards of evidence. Senator Cagnata?
Yeah, I was just going to say, to me, it looks like it says the chair should have the right to rule on questions of evidence. So that makes sense to me, but if it's the chair ruling on what is and what is not qualifying for evidence, I would disagree with that. But I think that having a standard of evidence is important, and that's not really something we can just like type up in a sentence underneath it. That kind of is going to take some longer consideration.
So would any senators object to having a subclause that says evidence must be derived from a primary source?
Yeah, I would object.
You would object?
Yes, because so if someone says they saw something, that person is the primary source, but where do we know what that person?
Well, that's where it comes down to questioning, because you'd be introducing that person as a witness.
So, okay, this isn't really a question, but I'm not really comfortable with the chair deciding on a case-by-case basis who can say what is evidence and what's not.
Well, do other members of the Senate have thoughts? Senator Byrd?
I believe we should allow the chair to decide what constitutes evidence, and the Senate just allows them to vote.
And that's a valid opinion. I'm just saying that's not what it says up there.
I think the word, George, I think they're saying that the wording isn't entirely clear, so we should just say the chair has the right to rule on what is considered evidence.
And I would object to that. I don't think that's appropriate.
Okay, well, right now I'm just trying to clarify what we're talking about in this clause, and then we can move on from there. So right now, it's not about questions of the evidence, but of what is evidence. I mean, it reads.
So when it says the chair has the right to rule on questions of evidence, if I'm not mistaken, in procedure outside of the undergraduate student government, that also means that the chair can disqualify an exhibit from the evidence gallery.
Here, George, I don't have something to say.
Yeah, I have a question for Ben. What's another option for that?
I mean, having a list of like what can be submitted as evidence in a trial, like such as like things that are documents or things. I'm just worried that because of the trial we've already had this past week, where evidence essentially was someone said they saw this and someone said they saw that or said this, that we're going to move into situations where the chair is going to say, yeah, I'll count that as evidence, or I won't count it as evidence without us having a policy that says what actually qualifies as evidence beforehand.
Before I turn to Senator Byrd, I'd just like to make a comment on that. Do you think that would limit what could be presented as evidence?
Yeah, that's the point.
Okay, but do you think it's possible that there's something that we aren't thinking about right now that could very much well be very convincing evidence, but that won't be allowed, that won't be admitted in the future because of the limitations?
I don't know. My point overall is kind of that I believe we should have had a caucus or some kind of conversation on this before having it presented to us right now to review and consider for a vote, but I do think we should take time to go over the standard of evidence you have to look for it.
Senator Byrd?
It's going to be near impossible to make an exhaustive list of what would be considered evidence. So rather than trying to define evidence, if you try to define evidence as documents, then you have to define documents. If you're going to, or is a text a document? You have to, it's impossible to make an exhaustive list. So I think the only fair way to do it is to add a clause that says the Senate may override the chair's decision on questions of evidence.
I think that's already done. Senator Byrd.
Where does it say that?
The chair's ruling shall stand as a judgment of the Senate unless a member of the Senate requests a vote on the decision made by the chair. Senator Schertz?
Frankly, I think that we need, this would be a good time for us to use outside counsel for how to do something like this. And I would recommend that we table this until we can get some kind of outside counsel that actually knows what they're doing. I mean, I've spoken, just like through regular parts of my life, conversations with lawyers, and there are people that have real answers to the questions that we're trying to ask right now. And if we had an advisor or something like that at a session, then these issues would be a lot less debatable, and people would have the information that we need to answer these questions.
Senator Schertz, I think that's a fair point. I respect that opinion. At the same time, it's my opinion that I'm not sure we have to take this that far. Granted, I think that's an entirely valid point. Do other members of the Senate have any opinions on that?
Oh, yeah, point of privilege. And I don't mean to interrupt you asking people what their opinion is about it, but I'm unsure of the way that I would motion for something like that to happen in this situation.
So that would be an appeal of the decision of the chair.
So I don't want to make your conversation.
Steph? Or Senator Swanson?
No, it hasn't even been
This is the
motioned.
presentation
It's just an
of
open
the
conversation.
Oh, okay, so people's thoughts on including,
All right, fine, hold on. Suspend the rules. Are you Nancy Sen, you okay with that?
yeah.
Okay.
So, we could include the clear and convincing evidence standard, which says, clear and convincing proof means that the evidence presented by a party during the trial must be highly and substantially more probable to be true than not, and the trier of fact must have a firm belief or conviction that of its
the Senate think of that?
I don't think we should be writing it here in the Senate. First, we should have had a reading on this to discuss it.
Comptroller.
Yeah, so just so you guys understand, this is something that hasn't happened in our organization before, where we are supposed to be, where an impeachment is being brought up. And it was done on such short notice, and it's something that we as an entire organization have overlooked as being a procedure that we should have thought of in the first place. That being said, try and keep what's supposed to be happening in mind. That a week from today, we're supposed to be having a special shit. I can't speak. I never just asked. We're supposed to be having a special Senate in regards to the impeachment of a senator. Now, that being said, we have no procedure itself. That being said, this is a possible, skeleton that can be used next Wednesday. And then you have all of winter break, all of spring break, and more time after that for us to reevaluate it and do this properly. Again, not to say that, next Wednesday that these procedures are going to be the all be it, say be it, that's going to mess up, the tenor of one of our senators. Everyone by in a week's time is going to, have the ability to think rationally to themselves as to whether or not, the senator should remain as a standing member or shouldn't. But these policies give us an outline to go through it, and we have the ability to fix it afterwards. And, not fix it afterwards as if, it's going to make a big issue or something. But keep in mind, if we don't have this, we have nothing going into that following week. And that makes things more challenging for us as an organization when, things were sent to us late, but we have an opportunity to work on it. It's going to make us stay here a little later, but what the hell? We have the room.
And also, I'd like to add on to that very quickly, guys, that according to our bylaws, we were supposed to do this impeachment hearing today. Our bylaws state that after impeachment is filed, after the judiciary decides, it is supposed to be brought to the next Senate. Now, we have no idea what we're doing once again, because this has never happened. So we're just trying to do it now, and then next week, we can do it. Because if we don't do it next week, guys, we hit spring break, we hit another caucus, and it's just more time that we're pushing it back and back. And at some point, it's just like, why are we even bothering if we're going to get to that in the year? So I'm just something, I understand that this is hectic, and you guys might not like how it's happening, but, we're trying. Yes?
I think what they're saying is that I'm a pioneer. President Combo?
My parts, the other idea is so if this were to pass and we're going to do the impeachment, we're trying to make this as fair as a process as possible. And as it stands now, it looks like it would just be a legislation or something, or recommendation to impeach a senator and then just an all-out,
And then just
this
vote
is
on it.
adding structure and fairness to it, just behind the mission of it.
Senator Sponza?
So, I think, considering that this is supposed to happen today, we've already decided that that would have been unfair, we moved to next week. The rules have been suspended, this might as well be accomplished right now. We have the time to discuss it, we have the time to figure out what's going to be fair to include in this. So, back to what we were talking about before, because I do agree with what Ben said about there needs to be a better standard of evidence in this. I'm going to say again, because I think we should get back to the conversation instead of talking about when we're going to talk about this or whether or not we should talk about it, let's just talk about it and figure it out. We should include the clear and convincing evidence standard.
Great. Could you go for that slow as you can turn that just so everyone can see that?
This?
Yes.
Okay. Clear and convincing proof means that the evidence presented by a party during the trial must be highly and substantially more probable to be true than not. And
Give me a second. I'm going to look up to read something. The evidence?
Presented by a party during the trial must be highly and substantially more probable to be true than not. And the trier of fact must have a firm belief or conviction.
The
The trier of fact must have a firm belief or conviction in its fact.
Senator Carbonaro? Senator Sherwitz?
I don't disagree with anything in the statement that Senator Sconce just offered. I think I'm going to, repeat myself one more time, is that the best we can do is Google us for each line to be reasonable. But yeah, that's what I'm saying, and that's what just happened, and that's like the best we can do if we, you know, like that's what Comptroller Ron's suggestion was, right? Like do the best we can right now to put something together, and I think those are really valid points. But we were putting together the impeachment process for someone, basically the trial process for someone who's already been impeached and hasn't gone to trial yet. And I think that achieving something impartial is going to be incredibly difficult, and I don't think we have the skill set to put it together in this situation anyway. So, I mean, that's the last thing I'll say. That I would think that it would be the best thing we could do would be to use an outside resource to come up with an unbiased set of rules and someone that actually has a legal background versus us looking up stuff on our computer saying, yeah, what do I think is best? You have to buy like 30 seconds on Google.
Murray, you had your hand up for a while.
Yeah, so I'm going to say that I don't think that adding that clause to this changes a single thing, because somebody still has to determine that this evidence is good evidence or not, and that person's going to be the chair. So I think that that statement basically is already covered by what we have, because we're still having the chair determine what's good evidence and what isn't evidence. So I don't really think that adding something like that really changes anything in the legislation that we already have. And I also would like to say that I think that simply putting it up to the discretion of the chair, and by extension the discretion of the Senate, is probably the best we can come up with tonight. It's just giving the discretion to us to decide if we think that it is good evidence or not on a case-by-case basis, instead of trying to form a list that probably will fail at some point.
I'd like to just respond to that really quickly. I do see the substance in adding a subclause here. I think that it does give a certain qualification that must be fulfilled so that judgments on evidence are based on this and not necessarily on whatever else. But I'll leave that to the Senate to decide.
Your hand up next.
Are you?
Lemoyne.
I mean, I honestly think we should just work on it tonight. And I understand the idea of like we need to go look at other resources, look at like advisement, and like honestly, like if it's like if we're looking at it as serious as the way people are thinking, I'm not saying it's not a serious issue, but it seems like everybody really wants to do as convincing as possible. I mean, you can go on the government website and freaking pull out their procedure, which I have pulled up right now. So if the federal system can use it, why can't we?
Federal system has two chambers, and it's not the same.
Yeah, but they're saying that's the entire trial, which is the House. The House doesn't get any evidence whatsoever. The Senate does. And the Senate has procedures on how to do that. So I'm saying if you want to model it off something, go ahead. It's just going to be a more tedious process. It's going to be the same exact result.
Right, and just to bounce off of that really quick, this is modeled after both U.S. It's a combination of a whole lot of different procedures which I've adapted in order to better fit a specific situation. Parliamentarian Lisa?
So during the hearing that the judiciary had, basically come to this conclusion, I was wondering if we could ask them like what they considered evidence in their case, and if we could apply kind of the same thing.
So,
Can I ask him? Tyler, how did you go about that?
we're gonna try to stray away from that because I want this to be understood that this isn't only for one impeachment hearing. Like we're establishing this for the future.
No, I know that, but the judiciary hears the case before Senate does.
Yeah.
So I'm saying if they can come up basically with a system of what they considered evidence in their whatever, like a baseline of what evidence is. I'm saying that maybe we can apply that from the hearing to what basically is sent. I'm not saying the same pieces of evidence. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that they came up basically with what they wanted to hear in the hearing. So how did you determine that? Did you consider like, oh, I saw blah, 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 blah evidence?
So in the impeachment hearing, we received a lot of evidence which mostly contained witness testimony or testimony in writing. We accepted all of it. It would be my recommendation in impeachment hearings and following trials that the same evidence is used in both. You guys are free to dispute that, but that is my personal.
Senator Cavanagh?
Yeah, so I disagree with that. Nobody in this room even has their undergraduate degree yet, and just because the chair is ruling and we're voting on it doesn't mean that we're right and we know the answers. So frankly, I'm very concerned that we're gonna have someone come up here for an impeachment hearing, and we're gonna decide whatever we think should be evidence is evidence based on how we wanna come down and decide on this ruling, right? So the Chief Justice just said. Okay, well, let me finish what I'm saying, please. So the Chief Justice just said that they accepted all testimony as evidence, whether spoken or written, right? But I'm looking right here at how to determine on this is legalmatch.com, but how to determine whether evidence is admissible. And there's standards that have to be considered in terms of what's unfairly prejudicial, what wastes time, what's misleading evidence, what's hearsay, evidence that strictly tries to make a statement about the defendant's character, what's considered expert testimony, what's privileged evidence. And we have nothing in here about that. And that, frankly, to me is concerning if we have no standards going into it. And if we all think on our own that someone should be impeached for what they did, that's one thing. But we shouldn't be able to have that opinion influence what we see as evidence and what has to be evidence in trial.
I'd just like to address one point. There is a provision for character testimony down lower in the amendment. Character testimony is not allowed. And in order for anything to be entered into evidence, or for any one person to be declared to have a political expert opinion on the Constitution or something like that, there must be a foundation which is laid. And I think the biggest objection, Senator Cavanagh, that you have right now is that there's no qualification for what that foundation is.
Sure, I guess you can say that.
Okay. Senator Lavoie? Senator Burke?
I'm also concerned with the fact that people can also exaggerate testimonies. Like say you're exaggerating. Like we don't know what they like we only know from what they said based on what they saw. It could be exaggerated, it could be doing it to help support this person and keeping them in the Senate. They might alter the truth slightly, we don't know.
That is correct. That is why there is the cross and the redirect. What a witness says is not just automatically accepted, because then the other party has the option to cross-examine that person and to establish if there are any inconsistencies or to establish if there's anything wrong with their testimony. Does that make sense? Senator Bayou?
Yes.
Do we have people come to the speaker or talk louder?
Senator, I don't know if it's possible to use the mic. I think the people in the back can't hear you.
You can use that voice portable, so.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And also, just another note before Matthew gets the mic, guys. So I'm starting to hear a lot of opinions on whether we agree or disagree not to do it tonight, and that's okay. But we need a solution to a problem. So solutions would be, so Matthew's solution is to, just like recap, you mentioned bring in the specialist, which is a very valid point. But what do we do in the meantime? Because this case was sent to Senate, so.
I was just saying that someone can take it upon themselves to kind of find outside help so that it's not USG doing it by themselves. It's not just us deciding and having someone come next week and potentially be impeached. So I really think that we need to make this. I know we have a question of time over our heads right now, but I really think that we should kind of seek outside help because, like Bennett said, we're not. This is not our forte. It's not our specialty. We can't just put someone on trial like that and then have them impeached on a very not faulty, but imperfect kind of basis we have.
I will make the, before we turn, I think next to Senator Michael, I will make the comment that, so this part is also taken directly from an iteration of the U.S. Senate Rules and Procedures on impeachment. And basically the logic behind this is that it's still a fair process because the body as a whole is able to decide at that moment whether or not something is entered as a question of evidence. So,
Police is next.
Hi, sorry. So I do want to just say one thing. I totally understand that this procedure kind of isn't fleshed out like Parth said. I think the problem with bringing a specialist in is that student government, it's not their forte. They work in the professional world. Student government, it's run by us. We were elected here. This is our procedure. So one thing that I think that we can do, instead of just relying on kind of this like barebacked, like very skinny procedure, is we're looking at what other schools do currently. Well, Adam is right now. So we don't deal with it typically, but I believe that other schools might. So other student governments, they take this matter into their own hands, and it is our responsibility to do it. It's not a specialist's responsibility, and it kind of, the fault lies within us. And so I think right now, if we look at another model, we present those kind of different options and we flesh it out together right here, right now, we can actually make a lot of changes tonight, which I think is our best option, instead of kind of looking for somebody within a week, and it might be expensive and things like that. So can everybody kind of agree on that? We're going to try and work on this together.
I didn't say an outside resource that we have to pay. I just thought that someone was very...
Yeah, so even with somebody within UConn, it's still our procedure. This is still our task, we're student government.
Sarah Michael?
Yeah, we just need to get this thing done. Like Senior Abe said, if it goes on past and break it back to the organization, just so not get into our other agendas. My solution would be just do what we can do tonight, and now we can bring any extra resources. So every time tonight, go on, do an extra day, have this done.
Senator Sponso, I think Senator Kundu had his hand.
Oh, no, you can go ahead. Yeah, all over. Well, I didn't have anything of a lot of substance to say. I just wanted to point out, looking at the situation right now, we have a problem. We need to get this solved by next Wednesday. So regardless of however we do it, we need to get this done. And at least to me, it seems that getting it done right now, right here, is the most efficient way of doing it, because we have no idea who we're going to go for help. That is a completely separate problem that we don't need to use right now. And I think as members of this body, we are rational people, and we can make rational arguments. And based on those arguments, we can come up with a set of rules that we can use for our special session next week. And these are rules that we're creating for our body, which is the body that we know, so we can use those rules to help ourselves. So I think instead of talking about how we should do it or not, I think we should just get to it and get this done.
Alright, clearly at this point, no one's mind is going to be changed about whether or not they want to seek outside help or if they want to solve it right now. So we're going to take a straw poll. We'll do it how democracy works. And if you guys really want to push it back, that's what the body wants to do. We can wait longer and we'll take the time. The thing is, I'm not going to do anything. I purposely had George do this so I wasn't, because I will be chairing this meeting. So once again, I'll take it to you guys because you guys are the deciding voice. Solve it now, or wait a week, explore the options, find, etc., etc. And yes, we can discuss it, but I'm just going to say right now, that will be what the discussion is about, and I'm going to limit it to. I know, but Senator Kagana wants to speak again. I'm sure other people want to voice their opinion, so we'll limit it for another 15 minutes, and then we're going to take a vote on whether or not we're doing it now, or we're going to wait. Okay? Does everyone think that that's a decent? Because you guys, we're talking back and forth about the same thing right now. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I was going to say we should just end talking about this, and I was going to ask Vinay what concrete things he wanted to add to the document, and we can ask ourselves, is this something that we all agree with? So, Senator Cognato, I was wondering what specifics in terms of what's acceptable evidence, what would you include in this document? So, I mean, if we want to get the conversation going, start there.
Oh, you used to speak loud, I'm sorry.
Well,
So let me just, from the thing I was reading before, read what I'm looking at. This is kind of where my thinking is at right now, and where I think that we have a trouble moving on solely as students and student government. It says that a witness statement is considered irrelevant because it doesn't prove or disprove any facts in the case. It sounds like we had witness testimony proving the facts of the case in the original approval of the impeachment trial to come to Senate, and then it says in that case the statement can't be entered into the record as evidence and won't be used against the defendant during trial. Thus, it's very important to make sure that evidence is carefully reviewed and analyzed in preparation for the trial. So we're essentially saying, no, we're not going to prepare evidence at all. We're just going to decide here based on what Colin thinks and whether or not we disagree with him. And for me, there was an article that came out with Tim Sullivan's name on it and a picture of him, and this is, if this guy gets impeached from student government, there's an article about him, his face printed on it, this is going to affect the rest of this guy's career and really his life and his, emotional well-being for the rest of this year and his, undergraduate career at UConn. And I really don't think, because of our bylaws, that we should be rushing through a process like this. With all due respect to Senate leadership, we didn't even consider the bylaws when we waited the entire first semester in order to approve, Senate rules. So I really don't think this is something that needs to be rushed at all. And I do think we need to have someone at an impeachment trial that's going to say, no, you're not allowed to do that. No, you're not allowed to admit that as evidence. Because I do not think that we're qualified to make those individual judgments as we go, even if we decide as a body. It's important to me that it's fair, and I don't think that we're qualified, no matter how much we want to get this done, to do that on our own.
Senator Cognato, I'd just like to respond to that really quick. That would be part of the reason why evidence is submitted prior to the trial to Senate leadership and then distributed amongst all the parties. And in that manner, both the party that is producing the evidence and the party that is reviewing the evidence will be able to take a look at it before the Senate and say, this should not be counted as evidence, and then they will be able to bring that to Senate and make those arguments.
That doesn't sound anything like what we previously talked about, though. So I don't.
Well,
So
what do you mean that doesn't sound?
you just said before that it was Colin would decide what was evidence, and we could appeal the decision of the chair if we wanted to.
Exactly. So the parties will bring their arguments.
That's not the same thing.
Well, the parties bring their arguments, and then Colin rules on that. That's why, if we look at section, or not in these, yes, in section. Sorry, section 1, subsection 3, the parties have to present both their evidence and list of witnesses to the Senate leadership 3 days in advance of the trial, and that's distributed amongst them.
That doesn't solve the issue of having someone who's qualified to determine what is and isn't admissible evidence during our impeachment trial. So that's not just in terms of like what we approved beforehand. That's what we discussed during the hearing. Like, I mean, I don't think we're on the same page here.
I mean, don't you think that gives the other party, they have the opportunity to review the evidence and provide arguments?
Sure, but what I'm saying is that none of us are qualified to review evidence in an impeachment hearing. None of us have done it before. The organization hasn't done it in a long time. Yes, we can come up with a consensus among us, but I'm not convinced that's going to be a fair or correct assessment among us. That's my issue. I think we need to have a professional who understands evidence, or at least have some guidance on it, other than coming here without having reviewed this at all and deciding it in one meeting. Yeah, I'm not opposed to staying and working as long as we need to get this done, but it's not feasibly going to be done the right way in one Senate meeting right here, right now. I mean, there's obviously an issue with it. I feel like there should have been a little bit more discussion around this now. Obviously, we can't solve all of the problems in this proposed structure for impeachment hearings as we sit here. I don't think that that's possible, but I think the main thing I'm saying is that regardless of what the procedure is, anybody can write up, so-and-so gets 6 minutes, then this person does this, then this person says this. I'm talking about the qualification of a person to say, this is this kind of evidence. It's not admissible in this because of this and that. We're not qualified to do that. That's what I'm saying.
All right,
So
I'm gonna say something, and then Adam's gonna say something, but if, on that basis, Bennett, like, how am I qualified to be a chair? Because I never expected something like this to happen. Like, it's just one of those things. How are any of you guys qualified to be the jury? Yeah, because you're a citizen.
There's a difference between a jury and like a judge who rules that someone is out of order. Like that, there's a difference there.
Okay, Adam's going to say something next.
All right, so my point in this is like, so I looked up some other student governments, like Clemson's impeachment procedure. It's not nearly as detailed as this. Basically, what I want to say is that the chair, things are put on the table, as in like pieces of evidence that are put on the table, and people can, on either side, can dispute that evidence, say it's not true. They can have witnesses that claim that it's not true, whatever the case may be, and then it's up to the Senate. It's not just up to the chair the chair allows it to be heard by the jury. I mean, this is the same thing in a court of law. You consider all the evidence, and then you see, is it convincing or not? Do you feel it bears merit to the case? Things like that. It will still be up to the Senate to decide based on everything that you've heard. So I don't want to put too much worry into this. You know, looking at other student government procedures, too much worry into what is allowed to be said during the time, because at the end of the day, each senator decides based on the merit, and we can debate based on what the merit of these things are.
All right, so I actually just read this, and this is actually very simple, and actually it sounds like it'll work. So I'm gonna pull this up here, and maybe we'll all agree on this. Maybe be crazy, because this is actually very simple and very straightforward. And
so I think that we can do this piece by piece, like people are saying, and put this process together. We're very capable people, and I'm not disagreeing with that. But this isn't a blank slate. Had we done that before someone had been impeached, it would be 100% fair. They would be subject to the rules that already existed before they were impeached. But someone's already been impeached, and now after they've been impeached, we're creating the rules by which we're going to have the trial. Now, when someone commits a crime or something and they go to court, the rules are already established. You don't establish the rules for how you're going to try them after there's a crime, which is why I think we should put it together like everybody wants to do. But after we put it together, I think we should send it to review by an outside professional who's guaranteed to be impartial, who doesn't have any stake in it or no personal feelings towards either person because someone's already been charged, and they can tell us if what we came up with is impartial, is fair, or is unfair. And we give funding all the time. If the dance team or a sports team or a hopscotch team needs a coach, if they don't know how to do their thing by themselves, they get a coach and they get help. So this is not just, this is also, I mean, it involves someone's reputation that will follow outside of you. So we shouldn't be worried to hurt someone's reputation because they did something wrong and we find that they did something wrong. But we should make 100% sure before that happens to someone's reputation, we're doing it totally impartially and professionally.
Speak a little louder.
I think that it's impossible. I think it's impossible for us to act as a jury if we're going to decide whether or not evidence should be admitted. Because how can we not be affected by the evidence if we're looking at it and saying whether or not it should be there? So if we're going to give it up to the chair, I think it should be up to the chair. We can't both act as a part of that process and be impartial to us.
That's a part that's actually directly from the U.S. Senate procedures on impeachment. It's basically in there to give the body the ability to overrule the decision of the
I'm not saying that there's no precedent for it. I understand it comes from somewhere else, but I still think it's impossible to be impartial in that way. And I think that especially, like, this is not Capitol Hill. We're students at the university. We're all in the same body. We just have to be in the same body. We obviously haven't done this before. I don't think it'll be impartial or fair if we're looking at evidence and saying, is this or is this not evidence, and then saying, we're going to be an impartial jury after that fact. I just don't think it's possible.
I'll
also, if this is from the U.S. Senate procedure though, there's the lawyers that are presenting evidence and the judges that are hearing evidence already have established, because they're trained and professionals, they know what can be brought into a trial and what can't, and the judges know what can be admitted and what can't. We don't know what can and what can't.
Yes,
That's
okay.
the bottom line.
Hadia, do you have any solutions or any sort of guiding thought? No, I'm just curious. I'm honestly, like, I'm just trying to process this and try to figure out a way, because automatically I think all of us are pretty much impartial at this point. I mean, this has been hanging around our organization for the past 2 weeks now. I mean, everyone's heard about what's happened. Everyone kind of...
No, yeah, but I mean that for future as well. So I'm not just talking about the specific case, we're talking about cases in the future as well. And I just don't think that, obviously it's not the perfect solution right now, but moving forward, we need to think about the ways that we are going to ensure that we are actually acting as a jury, or whatever Senate body it is actually acting as a jury, and not, because we're saying we're establishing this not just for now, but for all cases. And so how does that function when we're both looking at the evidence beforehand and then deciding whether or not we're going to hear it? It's just complicated in that way.
Sponsor.
So first off, I'd like to say none of us have the qualifications to do a lot of the things we do. We just were state funds, and I don't think any of us have that qualifications, but I don't hear that come up every time we do funding. Second off, juries in criminal courts are told to disregard evidence by a judge all the time. And it doesn't mean the trial is off or unfair, or the jury can't be impartial. So I would say that. And also, how much are the people who think we should seek legal counsel willing to spend on that? I don't think we should either.
All right, so we have now gone to our 15 minutes. So we're just gonna vote right now, straw poll. Who wants to do this now? Who wants to, move on with our agenda, go into reports, and then adjourn for the night, and then have who knows who to figure it out and present it in a week. I understand that, but I don't know whose responsibility it is going to be to vote their next week to trying to figure this out.
I think that the document is well written as is. I think that George did a wonderful job. I think that the commission that we have is great, and I think we should just vote on it. And I think that George obviously knows what he's doing, and is a very intelligent person, and is a third party who's not part of this case. I think he did a great job, and we should just vote on this.
All right, Johnny, last thing, just quick.
Sorry, I just have a question. If we
Louder.
push this off and don't do it right now, does that mean we push off?
Yes, because we have to pass these into the bylaws, so everything gets pushed back 1 week because we have to sign it in. And go, unless you guys are all up to meeting for a special Senate at some point besides the Wednesday nights that we have already.
It just wouldn't, it's not even, it's just not the shop.
Okay.
If you're not appointing members.
I'm gonna do this only with Senate because only Senate's involved with this. All right, so I raise of hands. Who wants to finish this right now? Work with George's version, work with Doug's version. Just figure it out by tonight.
Yeah.
Keith Stan, sorry, it's just easier. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Yes. No, you don't count. All right, that's a majority, unless someone divided. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 senators sitting down. Nope, 3 senators sitting down. So everyone else is standing up. So we're gonna finish this up tonight, guys.
Do you want to go to the version and just kind of show what another student body kind of came up with on their own? Like, it's super quick and super simple.
Yeah. So I think because Clemson has.
Say, like, student body.
All right. Because Clemson already has something established, I think it'd be nice to read it just as a baseline and then go through George's document. And it could be extremely similar. We don't need to change anything, but just nice to see something that they have established as their impeachment rules. So, I guess I'll read it. Impeachment proceedings may be initiated against any member of the undergraduate student government. Impeachment procedures may be initiated by any senator's motion to impeach. An impeachable offense may be... keep in mind, guys, that their structure is probably different than ours, so remember that we have different groupings and things might go differently. An impeachment offense may be defined as, but is not limited to, 1, being placed on disciplinary probation, or 2, not fulfilling his or her elected/appointed responsibilities as defined in the student body handbook. Any senator who brings up a motion to impeach shall present a formal written statement of these charges, which will be read before the Senate upon bringing up this motion. The written statement of charges shall consist of 1. Name of the accused and office held. 2. Specific reasons for impeachment. 3. 3 signatures of current senators in office. There will then be a 5 to 15 minute period of question and answer directed towards the senator presenting the motion concerning the written statement. Once the 5 to 15 minute period has expired, the body will move into a period of debate. Upon passing of closure of debate, the body will move into voting. A simple majority is required.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to make a clarification. This is the impeachment process, not the trial process.
Oh yeah, I just went from the entire thing. I didn't even notice. Thank you. All right. No, this is what we're sure. All right. So sorry. Orders of the day, which is the trial. My apologies for wasting your time with that one. Orders of the day. 1. The President of the Senate will preside. If the President is the accused, then the Senate President pro tempore will preside. The senator who mentioned for the impeachment trial will have 10 minutes to reread the letter of formal charges and then speak on the letter. The accusing senator is allowed to yield his or her remaining time to other witnesses. Once time has expired, the student body will move into a period of question and answer with the accuser and his or her witnesses until there is a passing motion to end question and answer. Question and answer will begin with the defendants and move to the Senate at large. After the completion of the question and answer of the accusing senators and witnesses, the defendant will have 15 minutes to present his or her case. The defendant is allowed to yield his or her remaining time to other witnesses. Once time has expired, the Senate body will move into a period of question and answer with the defendants and his or her witnesses until there is a passing motion to end question and answer. Question and answer will begin with the accuser, then move to the Senate at large. After the completion of question and answer, the Senate will be cleared of all non-senators, excluding the Attorney General. There will then be a period of pro-con. Once pro-con has ended by the post-passing motion of a senator, there will be an immediate vote. This motion requires 2/3 majority of current membership to pass. The accusing senators, defendants, and witnesses will pledge the oath. I affirm that I will tell the entire truth to the best of my knowledge. Any person testifying who commits perjury will be subject to high court prosecution and the student regulations. Wow, they have Attorney General and high court. How does that sound? Just the basis of it. The Senate is allowed to question. It's kind of more open, kind of less, so this guy just like present the evidence, question. You scroll back up to just the entire, there, that's perfect. So I actually kind of like that if we waste hours. Anyone have any comments about this? Adam Sanders.
So I think part of the reason that so many people were concerned, and not to say like George didn't do a good job on this, but I think part of the reason that people were concerned is that we kind of tried to, with the proposal, push like federal witness entry rules into a student government impeachment procedure and try to adapt to that. Whereas what we're doing here is not a criminal trial. I understand that it has big ramifications, and that's why we should take it very seriously. But what we're doing is not a criminal trial. What we're doing as a body is deciding based on what we hear, whether or not it's right or wrong to keep somebody within our body. That doesn't require all the evidentiary rules. You hear what people have said, you hear the case from either side, and you vote based on what you hear, the merits of what you hear, and if it makes sense, and whatever the case may be, whether or not that person should be removed from the seat or not. And I think sometimes, or I think in this case, if we're trying to infuse evidentiary, I'm pretty long. Forget it. You know what I'm trying to say. Rules and stuff like that. I mean, I was in a mock trial, and we needed like to have all these rules infused into it. We need to train for a long time and like figure that out. I don't think you'll find any student government who has evidentiary rules or like rules like that are so specific put into their things. You hear the sides of the case, you hear the evidence, you decide on the merits, and you vote. I don't want to make a bigger thing out of this than it is. I'll still take them obviously very serious.
Yeah, I like the question first, and I like how they have back in their process of words. I think that would really help the
Any other comments about this? How do we feel about this? Generally positive vibes if we were to retool the names to our own organization.
because what I was just saying was, you get into all these details and weeds. Now you've got the Speaker of the Senate deciding like, all right, like I'm not going to allow that was hearsay, or like I'm not going to allow that was leading the witness. Is that what we want our impeachment trial to be? I don't think so. I think that gets way too into the weeds. The simple nature of this, I think, is the way that it should be held for legislative body, where you don't have trained law professionals and judges deciding this. I mean, even in mock trial, you have like trained attorneys come in and volunteer time to be the judge because they're dealing with all these rules of hearsay and litigating, all those types of things like that. You hear the cases, you have the witnesses, people are swearing true statements, whatever, and then the Senate, at the end of the day, has the decision. Was this, whatever I heard was that which had its merits and which didn't, and then you decide based on both.
So if the judiciary has already seen the case and decided what was valid evidence, why don't we just say that whatever the judiciary has seen and said was valid evidence, they're the ones who we appointed to be in that position to have that authority, so why don't we just say if the evidence is good enough to warrant impeachment, it's good enough to be seen in this body as well?
It's not going to be, it's not going to be a tape recording of that thing that we're trying to say. You're going to have people coming here and making their case on the other side all over again for the Senate. I mean, the judiciary is a different thing. I'm not saying that, I'm almost saying that the chair basically isn't in, I'm saying we're trying to get too deep into the weeds of what is evidence and what is not evidence.
No, I agree with you. That's why I'm saying let's take the process of allowing the chair to even say that out of it and say that whatever the Chief Justice and the judiciary as a whole said, we accept this as evidence. We also, as a Senate body, will.
So why don't we just combine the two and then add to this that when they present
what I'm saying is that
I don't do evidence.
all the evidence.
I don't think any new evidence should probably be.
Well, actually, in the future, there might be an impeachment where new evidence is given after the impeachment has been heard by the
That's what I'm
judiciary.
trying to say.
Exactly.
They're going to come in here and make their cases again. And we're not going to know exactly everything that was from the other thing. You're going to have people coming up here and talking. Listen, I was here and this is what I saw. Unless that's not the way it works. I mean, like, am I wrong in that people come up here and make their case as witnesses who speak on their own behalf? And if you're going to say, what I'm worried about is that we have a scenario here where somebody comes up here and says, I saw this and I heard this, and then they look at the judiciary and say, was that part of the impeachment trial? And the judiciary says, oh, let me go back to the minutes and see if that was said before. You know what I mean? Like if that was the case, then basically what we do is just read through the minutes of the impeachment trial and vote. But instead what you have is you have people making their cases in front of the Senate.
Can I make a suggestion? Why don't we just strike the evidence clause in its entirety? There will be no more evidence.
No, that's not.
Well, no, not that there will be no more evidence, but that nothing will be entered as evidence, so nothing will be taken by the Senate as this is fact. What do you all think of that?
Yeah, right.
I think there needs to be some way to discard like completely ridiculous evidence, because like there is a chance that one of the witnesses could come in and say something that is like blatantly untrue. I don't think that would happen, but we need to have a safeguard in case something like that does, just so we can like scratch evidence in case we haven't used it for correct reason.
Well,
Nada?
Yeah, I mean, I agree, Adam. I just think, we are making a broad impeachment procedure that's supposed to work going forward, but the only impeachment trial that we have set to talk about now is, as far as I understand, based on an interaction between two guys, right? So if we don't have, and I'm not saying this is like an easy thing to do, but I with the way things are set up now, I foresee it being two guys getting up and saying their case and the Senate deciding based on whatever terms who we believe more or who we like more. I just don't see how we're gonna deal with that in terms of evidence here.
Yeah, and I don't think we're disagreeing. I think if the Senate were to sit here and say, you know what, it's not enough evidence. I don't know what was said there. I don't know that I can take anyone's word for it. Words may not be the same, whatever the case may be. doesn't bear merit to me, I'm not gonna do it. I mean, how else do you do that? I mean, nobody was there with a video camera to say this is evidence or not evidence. But if you're not gonna allow things to come to the table based on, you know, the chair's discretion, I think that gets warned. You know, you kind of decide based on the merits whether things were or not. If there's a sworn statement, maybe you take that as that this person signed their name to it. It's up to the Senate to decide where the merits are.
I really like erring on the side of letting more things come in front of the Senate. I mean, we are a jury of 26 members right now. Not even 20 members, so we have a jury of 20 people. And it's up to us 20 people to decide what we view as necessary evidence in the trial. We do it case-by-case basis. I think the less disclaimers and less things we put against people bringing evidence in front of us is going to give us a wider variety of things to choose what we believe in and what we think to be true or not to be true. I think that as a jury of 20 people, I think that we should try to see much information and size the story as possible.
I see value in that, but I also would say that it concerns me the thought of, I mean, so in any other type of trial within USG, if new evidence comes up, they can appeal. So if new evidence comes up, it should go back to the judiciary and they should remake their case, which is then to the Senate, accepting the evidence of the judiciary to review. We're not authorized, we don't have the authority or the knowledge ability to review evidence and say this is legitimate or this is illegitimate. If new evidence comes up, the party sees an appeal, it goes back to the judiciary, and then it comes to us, and we say, based on exactly what the judiciary has said, and based on exactly what happened in that hearing where the people testified and submitted that evidence, that's what we're going to deal with. And we view the exact same evidence, and I think that's what we should do. We don't have the authority to view evidence.
Yeah.
Yes, we do. So if new evidence, an appeal is only used when new evidence has been brought up after a decision has been rendered by the body that makes the decision. If new evidence is brought up after an impeachment hearing on the part of the judiciary, it only decides whether or not the case should be brought before the trial body, which would be the Senate. Then the Senate has the ability to hear new evidence. Only an appeal is made when new evidence has been brought up after the Senate has made their decision. But there's no way currently, if you delete the evidence clause in these procedures, for the Senate to decide what things the judiciary didn't hear is valid to be heard in front of the body. I think, the primary part of the judiciary in a impeachment hearing is to decide if there's enough evidence to bring it to the Senate for us to decide that the party is guilty. The judiciary doesn't hear the evidence to decide if the party is guilty. So us bringing new evidence after the judiciary has rendered their decision, but before the Senate, and need a procedure to determine what should be heard by the Senate.
Can I just make a comment here? I think that we are taking the definition of evidence into vastly different directions than I had originally imagined when I was writing this. The way I had envisioned the word evidence, basically, anything that a party will produce to try and prove their point. Right now, it seems like we're trying to make sure that evidence is admitted as fact. I don't think that's what I had envisioned when I was writing this.
So a lot has come up tonight about impeachments, and obviously we want to have a fair impeachment trial should this ever happen again. It was brought up that we should only hear the testimony that judiciary hears, or the evidence that judiciary hears. It was also suggested that we should bring in new evidence. I think in any future potential case, we should, at the bare minimum, present the Senate all of the evidence that judiciary has heard, but also leave the option open for new evidence, because in a future case, it's hard to say, what kind of proceedings might take place that might, new evidence might deem, a new result. So I think that keeping the option open for new evidence is very important, but at the same time, we should at least hear all of the evidence that judiciary got at the impeachment hearing.
I would just like to clarify that I don't think, and I don't know if your comment was right for me, but I don't think evidence must be heard if we decide it's fact. But I don't know if you're saying. But what would constitute evidence versus what wouldn't? So how the union cook downstairs feels about one of the parties isn't evidence. But a witness seeing something or hearing something or having text would be evidence.
Correct.
So we need to have a way to say, no, the Senate doesn't want to hear what the line check downstairs thinks.
That's exactly what I was saying, Senator. Thank you very much. You're just a much better organizer than I am. So basically pertaining, I guess one way to put it as to the relevance to the case. Again, I'm not envisioning evidence as fact in the case. Is that?
I think you're envisioning it as testimony.
Not even necessarily testimony. A picture of a cat, I don't want to be considered evidence in any trial. But I don't know if possibly a screenshot of text messages that are relevant to the facts of the case may be considered evidence. Does that make sense?
I'm going to write this down.
Okay, so yeah.
It's up to the Senate whether to assume whether that testimony, evidence, what have you, is reliable. So.
And I just for the sake of, I'm interested to know, I've been hearing safety, is there a way we can take like a straw poll, a non-official vote, just to see how many people disagree with what we currently have, or how many people are content with what we currently have?
I like that idea. I think we did a strong poll.
In just this one section. Just
No, I know. You're right there. Alright, so, straw poll about evidence.
Are we saying if new evidence can be brought? Or
I'm trying to think about how we're going to plan it. Yeah.
So that clear convincing evidence standard is both here what George and I are saying, that basically in order for that, for evidence to be considered, it would have to be more likely to be factual than not factual. Whereas I think George, and I don't want to speak for George, but I think it should be about relevance rather than whether the preponderance of the evidence is true or not true. It should be about the relevance to the case, because both parties are going to say the other's evidence and testimony isn't going to be true. So it should be about the relevance of the case, not about whether it's substantially more probable to be true than not. That's not what it should be.
So in this case, like what Dan was saying before about character witness kind of stuff, while it might not be important in this particular situation, there are times when character witness will be very important because someone will have done an impeachable offense, but it's only impeachable based off of the character in which it was done. So there are times. So I wouldn't want to put anything in there that would prohibit character witness.
Right. I would just like to make a clarification here, and that's also done if you look all the way at the bottom. Character, when we refer to character testimony, we mean that does not apply to either one of the parties, that applies to witnesses. You can't, for instance, on cross-examination, a party cannot try to establish a witness as being X character, because that's not relevant to the facts of the case. But the character of any of the involved parties is something that is not covered by what we mean when we say character testimony.
So I can understand my question. Do we use straw poll just to see if we can solve that?
Yeah, so
I think it makes it more productive conversation.
About 2 seconds.
So,
I'll go back to the.
So let's look at section 4 right now, and just the first part of section 4, disregarding that area that has the double slashes. So the chair shall have the right to rule on questions of relevance of evidence. The chair's ruling shall stand as the judgment of the Senate unless a member of Senate requests a vote on the decision made by the chair. Is that? Do we agree with that? Yes. All those in favor?
No, that's fine. Anyone dissenting?
I don't dissent, but would that be 2/3 vote?
No, overall, a decision of the chair is 2/3. Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, so now 4 is fine. No one had any dissent against it. No one's angry about it. So now is the part of the clear and convincing evidence compared to a relative. This chart is.
Currently at Subak.
Now that we've accepted that, I would like to retract that section that has the double slashes marked in front of it. What did the Senate think about that? Take it out? Well, because now the question of evidence is not whether or not evidence is fact, but whether or not it's relevant to the case. So this doesn't apply anymore.
That standard says there must be more likely to be true than not relevant.
Okay, we'll take a straw poll. All those in favor of removing that, raise your hands. All those in favor of keeping it? All right. I mean, the biggest difference is Clemson's jury gets the question. Clemson, the senators get the question, they ask questions. No, but we're really forced, it's really forced us, so that's why we don't need to worry about it.
Okay, so I'm going to go over a couple of things, and I want to see what everybody's reaction, opinions, and thoughts are, I know it's a lot of reaction, opinions, thoughts, things like that, and I know this is tedious, but super important, I know we all agree on that. So I just want to say, the truth versus relevance issue, I think we already take care of that because we have the oath already stating that. So does everyone see where I'm coming at with that? Does anyone disagree with that? That even if we put in the relevancy clause, it's not taking away from the truth clause?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes? Okay. We also have Senate procedures just in case if the chair decides if something isn't evidence or isn't going to be allowed at, the impeachment trial, that Senate has the right, and I know it's different in other court cases, but Senate has the right to rule that they would like to hear the evidence. Do we agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. I think that this version that we have come up with, or not me, but George has come up with rather, kind of takes a different approach to things than the federal system uses. But I do think that right now it does prevent a lot of issues that could come up. And if there's another issue that everybody is seeing, then it should be brought to our attention. But I think right now this is a really good version. And if you disagree with that, please voice that. But I think the big issues that we were kind of dealing with is what is evidence, what are we going to do if the chair decides that something isn't evidence but we think it is, and then truth versus relevancy in terms of evidence. Is there another issue that we haven't touched upon in kind of going over this? Oh, no, I'm saying for right now, because these were like the big issues that we've been discussing for about an hour. Colin?
Yeah, I can do it now.
Okay.
Maybe we should all see if we can send it to be able to have all the they let their senators.
Yeah, we're having.
Do you want to explain the cross-examiner portion of it?
Well, I don't think that Senator Michael's question has anything to do with the cross-examination.
One of the things that I said earlier was that if you had a question, you had to lay it down and say,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, on the Clemson rules, they let the senators ask the question. I like that for where we do the straw poll here to see if people say that.
Okay. So why don't we discuss that then? And then I think George, do you wanna explain your reasoning?
Yeah, so my reasoning behind having that portion in there, like I said before, is that it's to discourage actually the Senate from asking questions like that, because if the Senate is supposed to serve in the role of the jury, I don't want to also have a Senate in the position of directing the conversation. Because if the Senate is also, if they're pushing one topic particularly, if they're asking a lot of questions on that, that's going to, influence the judgment of the Senate, because the majority of the focus of the Senate will be placed on that. Does that make sense? That's my logic.
But if he can ask a question to the chair, you can decide to ask.
Exactly.
So it's not like you can't ask questions.
Exactly.
You can't prosecute.
I was just feeling more comfortable with me asking the question first, rather than me directly.
Well, you,
I'm just saying straw poll to see what's like.
Does anybody have any other thoughts on that piece? So basically the procedure would be, you would write down a question, you would bring it up to me, I would come up here, I would ask it to the defendant, and then they would state their answer. So it wouldn't be a conversation, basically. It would be very one way. So does anybody have any opinions on that? Bennett?
yeah, I think it makes sense to just have the chair deliver the question that we ask.
Adam has something to say.
Okay. So listen, I came into this with the mind that, well, first of all, I didn't know this was coming up. And then I had, once we started discussing it and we found like a simpler solution and stuff like that, I had in mind that we should just go with a simpler solution. But as more and more questions were being raised and like that challenged my interpretation of the way things should be, I'm realizing that I know it's going to linger over the Senate for a little while to have this thing drag on. but I think it's more important that we get it right. I'm not, maybe talking to legal counsel is one option. I'm thinking more talking to other student governments that have had to deal with this before, and the rules that they use is a good option. But I've had a genuine change of heart from when I came in here, from that we should just decide this and put this on the table right now and vote on it, to, okay, there are a lot of moving parts to this that are difficult to decide. And so my impression of it is that, like, getting those outside opinions, would be better than saying, we don't have the answers right now, but let's go with what we think is best. So that's my opinion. I think, Rachel, is that your opinion? That's what.
Yeah, and also we can go to Costco and every speaker there was their Costco.
We're going to Costco. I'm not. Some people are, and we can find best practices, but this is getting a little bit, I think, into the weeds in a way that would affect the way that this is going. And it's, to me, the lesser of the evils of what we're doing here. To me, it is going to be negative to have to wait to do this impeachment trial. But to me, the worst thing is to decide something quickly and worry about its legitimacy. So.
Mr. Vice President, if I could just respond to that really quick. I would also make the argument that I think that this is an incredibly fair and what's the other word? Sorry. Okay. Unbiased procedure, because no part of this procedure makes any special conditions for either party, and the procedure applies as a whole to both parties. And I think that impartiality does not make its legitimacy that big of a question.
George, you did a great job. This is not about the document that you created. This is more about
I understand.
the thoroughness of it. Also, and Vice President Kubler makes a great point that I also, until he brought me aside, I just wanted to get this done. But it is, I'm having a change of heart. Just seeing all your reactions and how strong you guys feel about each side of the argument and how we're going through this. Maybe it is best that we, I know some people won't just agree with this, but maybe we'll, devote some time to it. Delegates go to Costco, see if any other student governments have any impeachment standings, or if they've even gone through something like this before, and get advice from them. That's what Costco is there for. It's actually a perfect example of why we do go to Costco. Does anyone think that they're going to have any questions past these three people? All right. Perfect.
I know this wasn't a binding vote, but all of us at three decided we wanted to do this today.
I know, we can show up all again.
Before we decide to table this till later, can we just get a sense of what the current concerns are with this document as it is right now?
I mean, evidence.
That's the only concern as far as I'm aware.
Is there anything else that we're still unsure about this document? Because at least to the best of my understanding, I think this looks fine.
Yeah, and I understand that, but that's what we're on number 4 of how deep is this go?
To 8.
Actually, that's not that bad, but you guys can see 5 through 8 right now.
I'm just asking why. What is
I think Steph can respond. Are you going to respond to that?
Yeah, I was going to say, the senator that we were working to impeach was on the ballot for next semester. So, that's the thing in itself. But the fact that an impeachment is supposed to be happening next week is not going to be pushed back farther, because I'm assuming that anything that we come up with after running a Costco is not going to be able to happen at the next.
Yeah, we have to pass it first and then wait until the next time.
Exactly. So this is now becoming a very long thing. We're already more than halfway through the semester, and I don't see issues with this. But I do see a lot of issues with bringing in an outsider, the idea of paying somebody to do our work and to create our policy. I don't see that as something that's necessary. And I understand credibility. I understand making sure that it's, a valid document, but I don't think that's something.
should be done, one person writes everything, comes up, and we pick it apart in the Senate. I think it's something that would be really good to bring, have a group look at COSGA. Would be good to have us talk about and, be able to take apart and even review for more than just for 5 minutes before we put it up on the screen.
Yeah, I understand the 5 minute spot in front of the screen, but
It's like
really do. And I'm really sorry that we couldn't get it out to you guys sooner. I really am. But this stuff has been happening, once again, rapid fire, so I'm gonna, 9:10 at longest, guys, with these comments. I'm gonna have Tyler go first, and then I'm gonna do it.
Hey again, guys. So what Senator Sponzo said was absolutely correct. The bylaws clearly state, regardless of the extenuating circumstances, et cetera, that impeachment proceedings that have been brought by judiciary must be held at the next meeting of the Student Senate, which technically would be tonight, which technically puts USG in a violation of the bylaws. Now, I do not want to rush anybody into a decision. Obviously, we need to keep in mind future impeachment proceedings, et cetera, but we do need to really work on this. I would really like everybody to keep in mind the legislation that we already have passed. You're an able-bodied Senate. If you'd like to make changes, go right ahead. I'm just saying that we're already in violation. Let's not push it. Furthering that, there's been a lot of talk about witnesses, testimony, everything. I understand that that might apply in future cases. That does not apply in this case. The meeting is already public, the impeachment hearing that took place last week. Only one side had all of those things, witnesses, testimony, etc. The other did not. The events of the case were not disputed at all. Just the belief that some of the bylaws or Constitution may have been broken. So it really isn't relevant in this case. Future cases, yes, and I understand we want to work on that, but we need to work on it today and as quickly as possible. Thanks.
If we want to wait, go to COSGA, ask questions, take weeks to work on this to make it perfect, the reality is we are going to have to drop the impeachment against the impeached senator. There's no way we're going to get it done by the end of the season.
How many Wednesdays do we have? Have you already looked at it?
Not enough. Because if we want to bring it, if you want to get it, hear by COSGA, have a caucus on it, get it done, vote on it, send it out to an external group, bring it back, re-vote. We're not going to get this done. In reality, when you have 2 weeks left, there's no point in impeaching a senator anyway. So, the reality is, we're not doing it tonight. We're not going to hear a case about this impeached senator. So that's something this Senate has to grapple with. We're not doing this tonight.
That's simply not true. If we don't do it tonight, then it won't happen. It's simply not true. It's an attempt to basically just move forward summarily without giving full faith and credit into this.
Alright, instead of debating both of
Wait, guys,
you, count down. Can someone just count the Wednesdays we have? Jesus.
Yeah, but there's been an assumption made that it'll be
So,
this step before
I'm just saying,
this
the
step
rest of
before
it,
outside council. This
Sam,
step before
Sam, Tyler.
Just use some basic logic. How many Wednesdays we got left?
We have 7 Wednesdays left.
One of those is...
When is COSGA?
No, I didn't count that.
So we have 6, and then we're not doing this first sentence, so we have 5.
So there's less than 5 Senates, there's 7 Wednesdays.
No.
But we can call special Senate.
We can call special Senate. I'm just saying we have 7 Wednesdays.
5 Wednesdays. We have 5 meetings. We have 5 scheduled meetings that you guys need to be here for. Yes, Sarah. It's wherever I can find the room, and you'll be notified 48 hours in advance. Yeah. We'll have the rules and everything will be in place. Dustin.
So Shomo asked a pretty specific question. He asked for specific reasons that we weren't doing this tonight. Any specific concrete examples that we had against what George was presenting? I think it's
He doesn't see
Shomo
it.
asked for specific reasons that people had against what George was presenting. And I know we've argued a lot about everything that's going on and everything, but Shomo and I, neither of us have heard a single specific reason anyone had against what George was presenting.
Sure.
Okay, so first we're on page 3, and we've already spent an hour discussing one aspect of it. So I think there's a lot of things. I already know one other thing that I have a problem with we haven't even discussed yet. So I think it comes down to the fact that there are so many issues that we're discussing in Impeachment now. There's been no previous conversation on this. That we can go to CONSGA, have a special caucus, and have a special session and get it done in a week and a half. We're like pushing this through because.
Thank you. Wait, Sean. Adam.
So, the issue is not that there's anything wrong with this document. The issue is that with any document, a bylaw change of this magnitude is probably not, in my opinion, the best idea to ram it through like this. Regardless, I mean, the thing could be the U.S. Constitution written into our whatever. To send something through, in my opinion, is that. Then just one other thing, and this is just a sincere point, not argumentative, is that if the argument is that, well, we're not going to be able to fit this in if we don't do it tonight, the point is not to do an impeachment just to do it. The point is to do it and do it right if we need to do it. So if we need to take more time to do something of this magnitude, which I believe we do, and to do it right, I'd rather do something and do it right than impeach somebody just for the sake of impeaching them before the end of the semester so we can, for what reason, I don't know what. Perhaps there's negative effects. Some people might feel there's negative effects to keeping him in the Senate if he, whatever, but I'd rather do it and do it right than to ram something through and do it just to do.
Caruso had her.
So I kind of mentioned it before, not exactly the right way, but if I can make a suggestion, I kind of feel like we're going through this piece by piece, but I feel like everyone should just kind of take a few minutes to read through the whole thing so you can get just a general understanding of it, and then bring up problems that you have with the document instead of stopping at each section without seeing the whole thing.
But I mean, I think the point that Bennett already made is that he already has issues with it, and so if we were to move through it piece by piece, I mean,
I agree with what she said, but what she's saying is that we essentially should have had more time to review it instead of just coming in down to it. So that happens.
Absolutely. Murray had his hand up.
Yeah, so maybe I'm thinking about this the wrong way, but I'm just going to say the same thing that Dustin said. We just spent 5 more minutes after he said that, and I still haven't heard a problem with this. So if there's something that we can change and we can fix tonight, then somebody should suggest what the problem is so that we can either decide if we can fix it tonight or decide if we do need to put that problem off. But I still don't see what the issue with this document is because no one's really specifically laid it out.
The primary issue is ambiguity and it's trustlessness. Like it's not saying that, but it's just the ambiguity. It's like ambiguous. And we don't know how to do it ambiguous and should bring this. That's the issue. We're having a debate with that.
Dan?
So I want to clarify my statement because I think Vice President Kruger misunderstood what I said. So I never said it should be ran through for the point of impeaching somebody. I said, but if we don't do it tonight, the reality is I don't think we'll be able to hear this specific case. I never said that we should ran it through because of that. But the reality is I don't believe we're going to hear this case if we wait and do everything that everyone's asking, including seeking legal counsel, going to COSTA, going to a point-by-point and caucus. The reality is I don't think we're going to hear this case. I'm not saying it should be ran through to the point of hearing this case. I don't think that's necessarily right. But we are in Senate. We have an obligation. We swore an oath to do our job. And if it takes us working until 1 in the morning, frankly, that's what we got to do. Because if you think that we should be here, well then, I don't know.
Sponza.
So I think that if we had allowed George to read through the piece in its entirety, as he was reading, broke down bullet points of issues that we had, brought them up at the end, made a list of the issues, and gone through one by one and fixed them, we could have saved 2 hours of everyone's time and we'd be done with it by now. We spent an hour and a half talking about whether or not we should do this. So if we're going to do it, we need to decide, we need to have George read through the entire thing and make bullet points about issues that you can have with it, and discuss the issues and fix them and pass it.
So I wanted to answer your question directly, at least with my opinion. It's not articles of this that I have a problem, that I think there's a problem with. I think just like the reason that we're not supposed to directly ask the defendant questions because we're not going to be prosecutor or defense attorney, and
jury, I think there's an inherent problem with us without seeking any outside, unbiased opinion for the jury to come up with the procedures for the trial. So I think that we can come up with a great document tonight and then have it verified as being great by someone who's impartial, and then we remove that bias. But I think there's an inherent bias that the jury creates the procedures for the trial.
Sam, unfortunately, we have to, because we're passing the document where we set our own rules. So
Taking it to Costco, I think is kind of at least going in that direction. Saying, hey, let's get some unbiased opinion.
So it's like it's not clear cut. Look, Hadia's hand was up. I'm going to have Hadia talk first and then you can talk.
The issue that I have with understanding we in this today is that that's not how Senate works. We don't, us in this room with no research being done, with no knowledge beforehand, we shouldn't be pushed to make such a major bylaw change because we have the time. We took an oath to do our job. We took an oath to do them properly. And so I don't think it's proper for us as senators to sit here having no knowledge of this ahead of time and say, this is enough time and adequate resources to make a decision. And so I don't want anybody in this room to feel bullied or feel like they're not doing their job, they have to leave, as though it's not right to do it right now, because we have to do our jobs properly. It's not just to get it done. And so I don't think it's proper for us to sit here and even reading this document right now, we're not going to be able to see all the issues or think of all the solutions we could have if we had adequate time. And so it's not an issue of people can assert responsibilities about doing it properly and doing it supposed to happen.
I'm going to have, yes, that was a point. That is a point, but I'm going to have Parth speak, and then we're going to make a decision about whether we're going to continue or not, and then literally just straw vote, and then we're going to do the bullet point, because I like Steph's idea. We're going to read through it, bullet points, work it out, etc.
Are we going to continue to talk about what we want to do? Or are we going to do it?
Cool. Straw poll, again. All right. Finishing it tonight. Hands up.
Is it a situation that we could send someone outside the body to go over?
I mean, the thing is like we can do that with anything at any point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're actually about
I understand, but we also do this organization by, voting on. It's a majority. If 3 people are going to dissent and the majority of the body is going to say they want to do it, then we're going to do it.
Yeah, we also have rules saying that we're not going to be forced to consider something if we don't get it 2 days in advance. We're here, we've been doing that for 3 hours.
We voted to consider it, and that's what we're about to do right now.
All right, straw vote for tonight. Like doing it tonight and then stipulation to do it, bullet points, etc., etc. But by the end of tonight, this session, we will have something ironed out. All right, table it, more research, time, etc., etc. And George, you have a vote? You're abstaining? All right. I'm abstaining as well, so. Wait, you had your hand up though. Okay. Again, for tonight, raise your hand.
Yeah, we can vote.
It's just voting members, sorry. Voting members tonight, sorry, raise your hand again. Because you can abstain from this, guys.
Abstaining for good reasons, though.
7,
Wait,
8. More time. 7. Abstaining. 3. We're gonna do it tonight, guys.
So we're not even in like.
Yeah, no, that was a straw. I mean, if you want to put it into rules, then we can formally debate it and go through the procedures and take an even longer amount of time to figure out if we're going to do it or not. Yes.
Did you get her?
Good. You're for yes, right?
No.
All right.
One stand.
Yes, fine. Standing. For tonight. Seven.
Oh my God.
8.
Sit down. Count and then stand up. That is ridiculous.
No, she didn't count. She was looking at the board.
I mean, that's what I voted before. It's the same vote as before.
Wait, who was abstaining? And I would like to know why they're abstaining.
They don't.
Okay, that's
All right.
that's
Aid,
I know.
okay,
I
Aid,
just don't think
sit
we should
down.
do it.
Standing for what time? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
You know what?
No, it happened already.
I'm just saying, if half the body absolutely is completely against the idea of working on this, we're gonna have half the people in the room being unproductive and not even want to talk about it.
It's less than half, and we're not voting about whether we're committed to working on it. We're saying whether we're gonna work on it tonight.
Right, I know that's what I'm saying, but if a significant portion of the people in the room don't want to work on it tonight, then we should respect the
All
fact
right.
that it's actually affecting.
How about this? We are going to go back into session. And we'll do this by Robert's rules.
You can go big. You want to call it this?
No, we're gonna take this into Robert's rules right now, guys. Gross. Let's keep on doing it. Okay, so we're back into it. We're still in the presenting, so we're gonna go into a motion to consider this, okay? We're going to have George continue speaking, present it, then we're going to go into motion to recognize it, to put it on the floor. So if enough people vote against it, then this will be taken away, we'll go into our boards, and we'll finish the meeting. If enough people motion... Wait, that's not how it works. Gosh, I'm getting the rules on mixed up. Okay, sorry. Just present and go motion second, and then we'll go through it.
Okay, so now on to subsection 5. Witnesses may be examined by one person on behalf of the party producing them, cross-examined by one person on the other party, re-examined by one person on behalf of the producing party. Cross-examination must be limited to the scope of direct examination, and redirect must be limited to the scope of cross-examination. Does that make sense? All right, and below that's just enough of truthfulness to it. Number 6, an article of impeachment shall not be divisible. This basically means that we can't split the question on an article of impeachment. Number 7, after both parties have made closing arguments, the Senate shall have the right to deliberate. Members of both parties shall be asked to leave while the Senate deliberates. Voting shall occur during the deliberations. Should the vote sustain less than 2/3 of ayes of present members for impeachment, a judgment of acquittal shall be entered. Should the vote sustain 2/3 or more of present members for impeachment, the defendant is convicted. Number 8, if the Senate votes to convict, the defendant shall be notified. Both parties shall be invited to provide arguments on sentencing. Subsection 1, voting on sentencing shall occur during deliberations. A judgment of conviction automatically results in removal from office. The Senate may vote to bar from future office. A vote is sustained if more than 1/2 of present members say aye. I would just like to make a comment on section 8, subsection 1. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom of the legislation, you'll see that there is a finally resolved therefore clause that states that that punishment will not be applied in the case, in any case that is brought before the passage of this bill. The reason why is because I believe that would be post facto. I don't think that we should be assigning punishments to something that we have that has already occurred before we establish those punishments. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Is there a second sponsor?
Unless it's a legislative funding act, you only need one sponsor. Yes. Senator Coronado?
I mean, I think that's good reasoning that something like that isn't going to apply to case heard before that, before we pass this bill. But I mean, I wasn't consulted at all as to how impeachment processes is supposed to affect people's eligibility to run for elections. Where did you get that from?
Yeah, so I would agree with part I completely understand your question and recognize it during questions. So the next section is just the outline of the trial by Senate. It just provides a timeline to ensure that everything occurs in a timely manner. Does that make sense? It's Pretty straightforward. Good? All right. So the last section is just recognized objections, just the kind of stuff that either party could say if they believe that there's a breach of procedure. And then the final therefore clause, which we just discussed, which would make this piece of legislation, to my intention, not Joseph.
Would anyone like to motion? Bird, second. Murray. Are there any questions regarding this piece of legislation?
Senator Cognano?
Yeah, where did you get the idea to ban someone from running for future office from? Do you think you should have consulted with the Elections Oversight Committee at all about that?
That is just something that I took from the Senate, US Senate, Rules and Procedures.
All right, anybody else like to be recognized for questions? Yes, Chairperson Byrd.
Because that clause doesn't ban people from the organization. It only protects people from a ban who were.
Is there a question in this?
I'm asking for you to clarify. This is true. That clause doesn't ban senators who have been removed from office. It only says that senators whose impeachment happened before.
So all the way up to
That's what it says. It's not saying that.
So I believe Senator Byrd is referring to this, therefore we can finally resolve this. Am I correct in saying that, Senator Byrd?
What?
You are referring to this clause?
Yeah.
Okay, so yes, that would protect any member of this organization from being, from
The impeachment does
giving
not
them-
affect them in the future. They can
from
revoke
giving
their
them
office.
this punishment unless their case is brought up after.
That protection only exists for people who've been impeached by the judiciary before this was passed.
Correct.
Because anywhere in this bill, it bans people from rejoining USG after they've been impeached if the case was heard after this bill was passed.
Yes, that is correct. The Senate may vote to bar from future office. That does not.
What I'm saying is removal by the Senate during impeachment trial by the Senate doesn't automatically bar them from being.
Oh, yes, correct. So if you read Section 8, subsection 1, right there. So basically that is an additional punishment that the Senate can decide to levy under the legislation in its current form. Yes.
Any other questions? Senator Surwitz.
Does this document define what the chair is?
Chair of the meeting.
Can you repeat that question?
The chair is referred to throughout.
Yeah, so the chair by default, the chair of the Senate meeting is the speaker.
The chair of the meeting.
Exactly. And so the reason why I use the word the chair is in case the speaker is either incapacitated, unable to fill that role, or is the one being impeached. This will allow whoever is assuming that role to execute these duties.
Yes, LaVoy.
So you said you reached the 1/2 number from using the U.S. Senate impeachment rules about not allowing people to run for office again. Do you feel like it'd be more fitting to keep the 2/3 majority that we use for impeachment as well for that number?
I would be open to. Okay.
He's saying that he would, is he open to a 2/3 for the ban bar from the future office compared to the half of it?
I would be open to that. Yes, Senator LaVoy. I think that's actually a very good idea. Actually, I will just have questions about it. All right, so I will motion to amend that after questions is over.
Yes, Senator Sponzo.
I don't know how I feel about that portion because to me, impeachment is the highest level of punishment.
Is this a question?
Thanks anyway, Senator Swanson.
Okay. Are there anyone else like to be recognized for questions? Seeing none, we'll move into debate.
I was like,
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to motion for an amendment to the legislation.
Sponzo speak first and then we can go to you.
Okay. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to motion to amend Section 8, subsection 1, to say, voting on sentencing shall occur during deliberations. A judgment of conviction automatically results in removal from office. The Senate may vote to bar from future office. A vote to bar is sustained if more than 1/3 of present members vote aye.
No.
Oh, so sorry.
Or 1/2. Is there a second for his motion? Avoid. Are there questions regarding this amendment? Yes, Nada.
Speaking generally on that clause and the changes being made to it, are there any, maybe we don't run on precedent, but are there any precedents for us banning people from running for future office?
No, there's
through
not.
Impeachment?
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to go to education.
Chief Justice Smith,
Yes.
has there been any precedent or any sort of situations where the undergraduate student government Senate has banned someone from holding an office?
Well, unfortunately, impeachments have occurred in the past. But a lot of people choose to step down before it goes to Senate. And a lot of it was not documented. So, this is the first real impeachment we're getting that is going before Senate, that is being documented.
Thank you, Chief Justice Griff. Yeah.
I'd just like to make the comment to Senator Cardinale is that I think that if there was such a punishment enacted, I don't think that that would have been within the abilities of Senate at the time, because this is being introduced now. As far to my knowledge, the Senate should not have been able to do this before.
So my question is, why are we adding it to our policy?
Okay, he's presenting legislation. He's,
Sure, and I'm asking him why that's part of the legislation. I asked that question.
Right. I would say that, so first of all, that's something that's taken from the U.S. Senate Rules and Procedures on Impeachment. And second of all, I would say that there could possibly be some cases in which the Senate would be justified in barring somebody from holding future office within this organization if, in my opinion, the threshold of the charges or allegations are high enough. And I think that raising the bar in order to enact that punishment was a great idea by Senator Lavoie. I think it should be hard to do this, but I do think that that option should be open to the Senate in the event that there is yeah, exactly.
yes, Senator Biden, you might.
Would you consider the idea of a temporary ban or suspension or something less permanent ban?
So just to specify like a 1-year ban or something, or one term?
Something like that.
Okay. Anyone else have any other questions? You're gonna ask. I'm sorry. I thought.
Well, in my opinion, granted we only have probably like around 4 years here, so a ban of 1 year. That is something I would definitely consider. I thank you, Senator Biden, for bringing that point. Is there anybody else in the Senate who thinks that that's a good idea? Senator Ford? Okay. If that's the case, I will motion to. Wait. This
No, questions still.
That's right.
Would anyone else like to be recognized for questions? Yes, Senator Esponza.
So, what is, am I correct in saying that without 1 year, he automatically tied to the impeachment, that 1 year ban? Or is that something that we would vote on as opposed to like a permanent ban?
Yeah, something that is not the same as a permanent ban. That's what I'm asking. I really want us to consider the possibility of something other than a permanent ban. I think that's too hard. That's what I'll say.
Deputy Speaker Wang, I'm just gonna recommend something myself. Vote to bar from the future for a X amount of time or something like that, but we'll continue. Chairperson Burr.
Would the deputy speaker consider possibly making, would you consider a barring or a suspension, essentially letting the Senate decide on a case-by-case basis? my point for asking is because if you make it one or the other, the Senate's limited in their ability in each case. So you either borrow or you suspend, or you use.
Correct. That is something that I'm willing to consider and actually going to talk about. I actually just thought about something in regards to Senator Ryan Newman's reaction, not reaction, a recommendation, which is that I don't think that the Senate should be voting to bar from future office unless it's an extremely egregious case. I think that suspensions are also not necessarily the best of things either. But if the Senate wants to consider allowing for suspensions instead of barring, I think that's the prerogative of the Senate to debate that. And I will motion for that to be brought to the floor to be debated.
Yes. Would anyone else like to be recognized for questions? Moving on, move into debate. Yes, Chairperson Byrd.
I'd like to motion to amend the amendment. Or the motion.
Motion for an amendment of the second.
Will you put your hand down? But I mean, well, because we weren't yet in debate yet, and then if
Point
we're
of personal privilege, I'm really sorry. Before we amend anything, I just need to get the track and changes thing on here, so can we do that first? Technologically challenged.
Yeah, Chairperson Byrd's right. No, we were in questions, and then I moved into debate, and then you put your hand down, and then you put his hand up, and then you put your hands up.
Hey, Colin, do you mind if we suspend the rules just for a second? Is that all right? Because
Yeah.
I got it.
You can ask me to suspend the rules.
It's just a quick thing while she's typing it up. So I really appreciate those of you who want to get done tonight, but earlier we had a meeting here where we said we weren't going to do anything that wasn't appropriate and give enough time of thought when it had to do with our governing documents, because we've done that in the past and it didn't work. In the debate tonight, by my judgment, is not productive because we have not had anything to compare it to, and it's what we think of off the top of our mind. I appreciate George trying to do this, and I understand the efficiencies and research he put into it, but with only, and I will agree with Senator Sponzo had said earlier, with the 7 to 8, the amount of people who have left or cannot be here tonight, I think that it is in the best interest of the student government if you are given the ability to compare, or whatever. We're holding all governing documents, recommendations to the same standard, so I apologize. I think this has been a healthy conversation. This gives you something to go off of when you research. But I'm going to say that if this passes tonight, I will veto it because I think there needs to be more done. There needs to be more research. I will say, however, I don't think the conversation thus far has been unbeneficial because you've been able to actually think about it, engage with it. In University Senate, they have a rule where you do engage with it in one meeting and then you pass it. And that's why I'm going to just say that to you today. So if this goes through, I will not sign it because I believe we need to hold it to a higher standard.
Thank you, President Combo. And keeping that in mind, I'm going to go back into session, and then I'm going to entertain a motion to table at this exact point right now that we're in within the entire scope of it. So it's a motion to amend, and we'll pick on up on it in we'll spend next week caucus on working on this document, and then we'll bring it back from the table in 2 weeks. Once again, in Senate, you do not decide to go along. You can always overrule me with 2/3 and continue. But what?
Point
of personal privilege, or whatever. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to finish the debate on the current second-degree amendment and the amendment, so that at the very least, even if we table this, we'll have finished this and we won't have to repeat this exact same thing whenever we bring this next to the table or next to the floor.
I'm going to have to decline on that because it's just going to lead to more longer conversation, and it'll probably travel into further debate.
I Mr. Speaker, I would like to appeal the decision.
Okay, we'll do this by a vote. He's appealing my decision to entertain. Wait, I haven't said anything yet.
You entertained a motion to table.
No, I said I was going to entertain a motion. We're still not in the rules yet. All right, so we'll now move back into Robert rules, and I will entertain a motion to table this.
Motion.
Motion by Canado, is there a second? Second by Oje.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to appeal the decision of the chair to entertain this motion.
Okay, we'll do this by a vote. 2/5 majority overrules me. All those in favor of the appeal by Deputy Speaker Wang to continue, please.
Correction, Mr. Speaker, to continue this until we have finished debate
Okay, yes,
on the
sorry.
second degree amendment and on the amendment, so that
Okay.
next time we bring this to the table, we will not have to repeat this exact same thing.
On the amendment to the amendment, all those who want to continue and therefore appealing my decision, please stand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Please sit. All those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. An appeal denied. Oh, sorry. Abstentions? 2 abstentions.
Point of information.
Yes.
When we bring this back to table, if the vote to table goes through, will we take the amendment to the amendment when we take that back?
Yes, correct. We're putting a bookmark in it and then opening it up again. All right, so the decision to appeal from the chair has failed. And now we'll move into debate, I believe. Do we debate this?
There's no
debate.
resolution.
All right, we'll move into a vote. All those in favor of laying table until the next Senate meeting.
Motion to table is
There is debate.
We would like to delay consideration tonight on a specific time, vote to postpone, need a second, anyone from someone, no, is the motion debatable, yes.
Okay, so would anyone like to debate this motion to lay table?
I'm just going to say that if this is a point of order, if we're debating it, and since we're setting it to a specific time, that's a motion to postpone, not a motion to lay the table, which is where that confusion has happened. According to my placard, at least. Says the motions to lay to table is to an unspecified time and is not debatable, whereas a motion to delay consideration to a specific time is a motion to postpone to insert time, and that is debatable, which sounds like it's what we're trying to do.
Point of information, are we motioning to table until the next Senate, until emergency Senate, or 2 weeks? What's
Currently, right now, we're motioning to table to the next Senate meeting, the official Senate meetings where we are in Senate. Well, we don't know when, yeah, because that could be an emergency.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. If I'm correct, I believe the motion was to put on the table, which must be then brought back to consideration by a motion to bring forth from the table.
Yes.
In that case, then this is not debatable, correct? Well, the motion did not carry a specific time.
Sorry, my apologies. Deputy Speaker Wang is correct. We're not debating this. And I'm just going to remind everyone that motion to table, yes, we need to take it from table. So that could be the next Senate meeting, or it could be 5 Senate meetings. It could be next year. Actually, it can't be next year. That's wrong.
Well, then, is it laying table something you can only take and put things on the table within the scope of a single meeting? Right, we can't table something now and then take it off the table in another meeting.
No, you can table it. We've done that before.
Point of order.
Sure, we've done it before, but I don't think we're-
Point of order, can we make sure that the minutes are clear that your motion to table, not to postpone? So that it shouldn't say motion to table for 2 weeks. Until the next Senate, it should be motion to table.
So, minute taker, what does the motion read? Okay, so can we add motion to table until taken off the table? Well, just to clarify, because we see conversation.
What is my colleague though?
Okay. We'll move into a vote. All those in favor of laying table to this until it is taken off the table, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Nay. One division? No. Any abstentions? Abstentions? And table. Here, can you get that? All right, that is the end of new business. We'll now move into reports. Report of the President, President Convoy.
All right. Hi, everyone. So to I'm winding down with all of my tasks. I had a meeting with the chief of police, where they referred to George for spring weekend things, so we didn't really talk about that much. And other than that, I don't think I have much to report. After next week, I will kind of be old news in a way. We'll go to president-elect, so after that point, we'll start with transitioning, and it'll be great. I do want to say, though, that no matter what happens in this organization, y'all respect each other, and y'all expect to treat each other with respect. And that's just something I expect, and if you see something, be a leader. So, thank you, guys.
Are there any questions for President Convoy? Thank you, President Convoy. We'll now move into the report of the Vice President, Vice President Kugler.
Okay, so the first thing is just that thank you to everyone who came to the basketball membership event. Raise your hand if you were there. Ooh, okay. And we're losing at the half, which might have been our bad luck. I don't know. But in the future, I just want to say that Chief of Staff Lechicon did a phenomenal job advertising that, making sure we found a date where people could go, getting people to fill out a doodle poll to make sure they could go that date, and then setting it up so that when we bought tickets, we knew we had people to fill them. And then less than half the people who said they could go ended up going, even after she advertised it and everything else. So in the future, please just try to be better at that. And I'm saying that mostly because I know she worked extremely hard on it, and it's also better for the organization if we're showing up at those things. And I'm not pointing the finger at anyone specifically, but just in general, let's try to have good attendance at these membership events. I think it was a good event. We had a good time. Those of us that were there, it was a unicycle performance at halftime. That was pretty cool. So keep up with the commendations. You should all have an email about commendations. Keep adding to those. Props to Shomo for joining the Subag Husky-Thon team with me, which was pretty cool. We had a great time. I know there's other members of the organization who were there. The banquet facility is currently in the process of being finalized. Thanks to everyone who worked on the infographic for the U21 committee. Erica and I are meeting with Global Affairs tomorrow. So anyone who's on the U21 committee, you should be hearing from us soon about the next meeting that we're going to schedule as a group. And then the last thing is very important. So in the past, we've been kind of relaxed about personal packages being sent to the office. People have had personal packages delivered there. But from now on, we're going to discontinue that. So if you have a personal package being shipped, have it sent to your dorm or apartment, wherever you live. Don't have it sent to the office, just because we have staff, we have Dawn and Daria who are there, who are working, who receive packages, but they shouldn't be having to sign for personal packages. So that's just going forward. Let it be known. There's going to be an email about it too, so there shouldn't be any unclarity with that. That's all I have.
Are there any questions for Vice President Kugler? Thank you, Vice President Kugler. We'll now move into the report of the Speaker. I'm sorry about how jumbled this was. I truly just wanted to get this done, and maybe my intentions were not the best about how we went about this, but I thought that being prompt and quick with this was something that this organization should be, and maybe that blinded my ability to see the consequences of how we would go about this, and also the ramifications of the document that we would create. So I will try to come back more prepared for next week. And yes.
We voted as a body here, so you don't have to apologize. I think you did a great job moderating.
But besides that, I was pushing for this to go through, and I apologize if any of you felt pressured by my decision to bring this and not dissent in a unanimous vote, because I understand that dissenting in a unanimous vote could be scary, could feel like you're being pressured because I state that it's unanimous, and you'd have to go against me. So I'd like to apologize, and are there any questions? All right, seeing none, we'll move into the report of the Comptroller, Comptroller Round.
Hi everyone, just to reiterate what President Convoy said, amongst other, Yeah, amongst all the frustration and everything we're dealing with, still very much thank you to everyone who, was very composed and no one got hostile and everyone was very respectful. So that's something to definitely be proud of. I did have a fancy chart with how much money we've spent. We're about now at, I had said 32 last week, but it was actually 30,115 that we had spent. Add another 1,500 on that. So now we're at about $32,000 spent on legislative requests and have about 18,000 left. Committees have spent between 35 and 50% of their funds. Most of that will be made up during spring weekend. Oh shit, yeah. So that kind of tells you, and then Funding Board, I don't know why. Funding Board has spent $400,000 that has left our building. We still have about another $200,000 that's in open purchase orders and accounts payable. So those are our numbers right now. That's all.
Are there any questions for Comptroller Arana? Thank you, Comptroller Arana. We'll now move into the report of the Judiciary. Chief Justice Riff.
Hello, my gumdrop buttons. I just wanted to make a few points. Judiciary has been very busy within the last 2 weeks. Unlike President Convoy, I will not be old news next week, so something to keep in mind. Voting is open now, so make sure you get out the vote in any way possible. That'd be great, really appreciate it. Going off of the speaker's apology, I just wanted to say it's important to note, now I know that the executive branch has noted that we should be doing things slowly and making sure that everything is done right. And I admire that perspective, but I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't remind you all that it says clearly in the bylaws that we need to hold impeachment sent by judiciary at the next meeting of the student center. So we are in violation of that. Aside from that, I wanted to make another point. I did mention several times that you can all come to me with any kind of elections questions, etc., whatever. I am going to make myself available. But I just wanted to clarify a little bit because things have been sort of getting a little hazy. You can send an email to judiciary@usg.uconn.edu any time of day or night, and I will respond to it as quickly as I possibly can. But that being said, I will no longer be responding to USG texts, calls, or Facebook messages. So if you'd like to call me at 3 o'clock in the middle of the night to invite me to Chuck E. Cheese or a Green Day's concert, I'd be more than happy to do that, but nothing business related. Let's see. Okay, I don't know when the impeachment stuff is going to go through, but for the week of the 14th to the 18th, I will not be available. I will continue to check emails as frequently as I can, but I will be coordinating with the other members of Judiciary to make sure that they're attending meetings or answering questions, whatever you guys need. I'll try to make sure that that's all good and covered. I also now, in addition to sitting on the Student Trustee Election Committee, I also now sit on the Smoking Policy Task Force. So if you have any questions related to lighting it up on campus, me and Chairperson Byrd are the people to talk to. So that is my report. Have a great night. Any questions? We got a question.
Yes, and Responso.
How is the judiciary going about enforcing the fact that there's supposed to be a sitting justice on each committee every week?
I directed the persons to alert me if the assigned member of that committee was not attending. There have been certain circumstances where members could not make it because of extenuating circumstances, and I have tried my best to fill the empty seat in those meetings, but it is something that I continue to ask that chair people alert to me as quickly as possible.
Are there any other questions for Chief Justice Riff?
Mr. Wang.
Mr. Chief, my prayer was that you see that you were in violation of the bylaws on this week.
Well, okay, now here is this is way outside the scope, but let's say we decided to put the impeachment hearing on the agenda. And we brought it to Senate. And we voted to table it.
Mr. Chief, sorry, this is just going in a different direction. I just wanted to basically ask you, if in your opinion, because the bylaws do also state that the defendant may have the right to represent himself or herself before this in the Senate, do the bylaws contradict each other?
You could make a reasonable argument that says that. You could also make a reasonable argument that says it does not say in person. You could also make a reasonable argument that says that particular person has not been barred from this meeting, and so, although there is a great deal of...
to any reasonable...
Yeah.
Would you say that they...
This is kind of like beyond questions, so you can just finish it up, please. Just the question, and then... Any other questions for Chief Justice Riff? Thank you, Chief Justice Riff. We'll now move into the report of the Academic Affairs. Chairperson Gopal, who left and left his vice chair or member of his committee. Just a buddy. Yes, oh, you are the vice chair.
So last week we had a phenomenal focus group hosted by me and Dirk. It was on gen ed requirements. It was actually a great time. This week we're having Vice Provost of the Library, Martha McDowell. She's coming and talking to us tomorrow. If anyone wants to sit on that, she'll be there at 5. If you don't show up late, please show up when I suggest. If anyone's interested, she's going to be talking about what's going on at the library. If there's any questions about care packages, we're also moving forward with those. Feel free to contact Ven or me or the other vice chair. Just anyone. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Senator LaVoy? Vice Chair LaVoy. Thank you, Vice Chair LaVoy. Now move into the report of External Affairs, Chairperson Byrd.
This week, Senator Ali and I went to Hartford and had a great time testifying on Senate Bill 147 and House Bill 5376. Senate Bill 147 is about institutional financial aid for undocumented students, and House Bill 5376 is about affirmative consent standards at institutions of higher education. So I thank Senator Ali for coming with me, so I wasn't alone. She gave great testimony, as did I. Just saying. Also, External is working on continuing to contact legislators about UConn's budget. We want to make sure that the one interaction we had with the Appropriations Committee isn't the last, so we're going to be calling, emailing, and hopefully even having in-person meetings with legislators, and also potentially work on a little satire projects. So thanks to Sam for that idea. I also wanted to say thank you to, a little shout out to Vice President Kugler and Chief Alechikhan, just because I think some of the work they do goes unseen. I know Eric has been doing a lot of work on Banquet and U21, and I don't think, frankly, they get enough credit for that kind of stuff, so shout out to them. I am also on the smoking committee, as Tyler said, so if you will have any questions or suggestions about smoking policy or anything like that, I can share those ideas with that committee, so either come to me or Tyler. Any questions?
Thank you, Chairperson Byrd. We'll now move into the report of, Funding Board. Vice Chair Boyd. Are there any questions for Senator LaVoy? Seeing none, we'll move into the report of Student Development. Chairperson Valverde.
Alrighty, so first off, I just want to bring up that the Speak Out is Monday, March 7th at 7 p.m. We'll be posting it on our social media, so I'll talk to Sydney about that. We really just want to help students without borders with this event. And we're trying to get the contact for all activist groups from Comberg, so I'm just waiting to hear back from them. For Founders Day, we're working with Kim Schwartz from Event Services. We have 2 locations right now that are looking pretty good, so the practice field and W Lot. And since pretty much since Oozball is not going to be in W Lot now, we actually have more of an opportunity to hold the event there and have the fireworks get shot off from there. For Celeron Path, Vice Chair Sponzo is working right now to see if we could work with Take Back the Night so that we could try and coordinate something with the walk going into Celeron Path. And then with Let Them Eat Cake, we're actually starting up, Cindy Tran will be in charge of that. And we're going to start filing up like an action plan for that because we really want to make sure that it's organized. And also with the spring weekend chair, George Wang, he's making sure that we have a location just in case that the weather is bad that day. Other than that, we're working with ODE on the sexual assault and the consent campaign. And we're waiting on a meeting right now with athletics to see if they're okay with using kind of like cartoon caricatures of the basketball team to make a video about consent. And other than that, that's really it.
Are there any questions for Chairperson Valverde? Yes, Senator Bayanima.
So pretty much they're just holding a speak out where students could talk about like issues on campus. Students Without Borders is hosting it, and right now we're trying to get more activist groups to attend, but as of now it's Monday at 7 o'clock in the Student Union Theater. So it's just going to be like students could just voice their opinions and stuff like that.
Are there any other questions? Yes, Senator Sorowitz.
Sorry, could you explain that scenario with cutouts of basketball?
Yeah, so we're working on a consent campaign, and if anyone's ever seen like the What is Consent with like the T video, a lot of videos are kind of like caricatures or cartoons and drawings. So our initial idea was to try and use the basketball team, but it is kind of March Madness, and we're expecting, that the teams are going to be very busy at this time. So Vice Chair Spons was waiting to see if we could get permission from the department if we could at least do cartoons of them. And everything's being student run, so we're having like students do the drawings, students do all the effects to make these videos, if the athletic department allows us to.
Are there any other questions for Chairperson Valverde? Seeing none? Oh, thank you. Seeing none, we'll move into the report of student services. Chairperson Conrad, left.
She's doing interview stuff. I think she got.
Regardless, she's not here to give her report, so we will move on to announcements. Would anyone like to be recognized for announcements? Yes, Parliamentary Puglisi.
I will let Senator Ali.
Senator Ali.
This Friday at 2:30, which is going to be, it's going to be on the seal. We're going to have a vigil for 3 Sudanese Muslim men who were executed. I don't want to speak a word over this, so I can't believe Indiana. So this, we believe it was a hate crime. We're going to have a vigil to honor their deaths, obviously, and honor their families, and also have a rally. So really appreciate us all coming out. And then also, please come out to the event that Irma was talking about. It's going to be Students Without Borders. And then also, we have Uprising as co-hosting to really great event.
Anyone else have to be recognized for announcements? Yes, Chief Justice Grant.
Hello, my little rattlesnakes. Quick thing. You know how I mentioned during my report I wasn't going to be here the week of the 14th to the 18th? I was just informed by some other members of the judiciary that is spring break. So, I'll be here. Enjoy.
Senator Bayanima. Does anyone else want to be recognized after? Okay.
Yeah, so we've had 3 consecutive meetings for our Global Affairs Ad Hoc Committee. That's a big step. Last semester was very turbulent. We had a number of interruptions, but things are moving forward. I'd like to thank 2 senators, actually 3. Senator Cabrado, Deputy Speaker Wang, and my sister. They've really showed a lot of support. It's great to have you guys. We're really moving along, and we needed a bit of leadership in the committee. So I encourage other senators to join, and have a good weekend.
Thank you, Senator Bayanima. Senator Surowitz. Thank you, Gus.
So I just want to let everyone know there's a bill going before the it's going before the Veterans Affairs Committee in Hartford tomorrow. I'm going to testify on it. It's a bill that would extend a National Guard tuition waiver that's available to National Guard soldiers in the main sessions, would extend that bill to the what they're calling extension programs, which are basically summer and winter sessions. The bill would also extend this tuition waiver to qualifying veterans during those same periods. UConn has already extended that benefit to qualifying veterans, but other state schools aren't compelled to do that. So that testimony will be from 2 to 3 p.m. tomorrow at the Capitol in Hartford, and there'll be some student veterans going to that. So. And on a totally other note, I would like to bring attention to people that, and I'd like someone to correct me if I'm wrong, but that Senator Sullivan was still running in this campaign, and when I voted today, he was not an option to vote for.
No, that was something that was the election. Sorry, it's corrected. Student activities corrected it.
It was corrected early this morning.
Yeah, but it wasn't available for a few hours.
Yeah, I voted around 10:15 to 10:30.
All right. Parliamentarian Lisa?
Guess what time it is? It's kudos time. Okay. Nobody seems excited. That's okay. Thanks, Colin. Okay. Kudos to Chief of Staff and Public Relations Director Sydney Dingloo for being so helpful and quick in putting up election ads and working on advertising for the daily campus. So, take a tree. Yay. Kudos to Stephen Porcello, who has gone above and beyond and expected to help organize legislative funding requests and give all student groups a chance at funding through Senate over the years. George P. Wang for all of his efforts to document everything, attend all meetings all the time, and ensuring that all 3 branches have everything they need to work effectively. And last but not least, President Conboy and Vice President Kugler for all the big and little things they do each and every day to oversee the organization that don't get noticed. So I also want to leave off with a quote that I really like, and it's, "A candle loses nothing by lighting another candle." We're doing a great job. Just keep going. I know it's hard to stay positive sometimes, but we're doing a great job. So.
Sorry, just one more. It's okay. I don't mean to. I'm sorry. I didn't have time to submit it, but I do want to give credit to Senator DeVere because a lot of times we split people on university senate committees and they kind of sit there passively. In those focus groups, not just through active affairs, but I've gotten other great recommendations and great feedback, contract participation, and doing that project and being hands-on and getting student voice on there is like fantastic, and I think there really needs to be some sort of like recommendation.
Would anyone else like to be recognized for announcements? Seeing none, we'll adjourn at 9:59 from Bay High Gamble.